All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Sunday Wire, your weekly news omnibus program right here at Alternate Current Radio and 21stCenturyWire.com. We're streaming out live, multi-streaming out to X at my account, at Hesher Media, and at YouTube, at the Alternate Current Radio YouTube channel. What's up? Great to see everybody over there. Same at Rumble and Rockfin and Spreaker. Thanks again for joining us today. This is a live broadcast for October the 6th. That's right. That is a almost just one digit away from a date that has lived in infamy for the last 364 days. So we're definitely going to be talking about that. And I've got a wonderful show lined up for you today. We've got Patrick Henningsen joining us. He's going to be entering right now. Patrick, welcome to the Sunday Wire. It's great to see you.
Yeah, it's great to be back, Hesher. It's great to be back.
Great to have you. Great to have you. And we've got Freddie Ponton with us as well. Let's welcome Freddie to the stage here. Hello, Freddie. How are you?
I'm good, Hesher. Good to be with you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, man, it's great to see you. Great to see you. We got a full beard compliment here today. And very happy to be here with you guys. So a lot going on. Yesterday we had last week on episode 518, Patrick rejoined the show. That was a really cool conversation. Patrick got a lot of great feedback on it. A lot of people happy to see you and get your analysis as things just sort of seem to be descending. Escalating. I don't know whether they're escalating or descending. They're kind of two different directions. I guess it depends where you're at with your worldview as it comes to the Middle East and potential larger conflicts. So many things wrapped up in it. But let's get right into it. So it looks like we've got a new a fresh invasion happening. I saw a bunch of messages last night in my Telegram feed about more rockets falling, new Israeli front happening in Lebanon. So what's the latest that you've been hearing, Patrick?
Well, it's been a big week. Iran retaliated. That was the sort of belated retaliation for the assassination of Hamas leader Hanani in Tehran, and the rocket salvos. Nobody will forget those images. I mean, pretty unbelievable, unprecedented rocket barrage, missile barrage hitting inside Israel. And it really shook, I think, geopolitically shook the tectonic plates of the Middle East and globally. I'm sure there were freakouts in Washington and all of Israel's allies, but not least of all in Israel itself, for people who live there to see that scene and see all those hits come, and then the replays on social media, all of a sudden, it's not the safest place in the world, Israel. So, and then Israel's vowed retaliation. Iran said, if you dare retaliate, we will hit back harder. In the words of Dr. Mohammed Marandi, we'll beat you into submission, which he said on a number of interviews. So the United States has said they're going to help Israel hit back. What does that mean? And Iran said, if the U.S. helps, we're going to basically smash all the U.S. bases in the region. So be careful. Iran will respond proportionately. They're not completely hot-headed and over the top like Israel is, or like the United States is. They said they'll do it proportionally. So, I mean, I would be very careful if I was Washington, what they do next, and not just for Iran and not just for Israel and the U.S., but for the whole world, because this could really we are. It's no exaggeration. This is that one of those World War III moments in the next 24 hours. Israel wants to make a big statement because of October 7th. They've marketed this as their 9/11, which is ridiculous to even compare these two things. Not least of all because it's now shown. I'm not sure if you have, Hesher, the last graphic I gave you, but the Lies and Propaganda article for New Dawn magazine. I sent you a title page for that. But in that article is about a 5,000 word piece on New Dawn published in February. And I outlined all of the lies of October 7th. And it's all researched, footnoted, all mostly Israeli sources, by the way, Lies, Damn Lies, and Propaganda. This is a very successful New Dawn feature. They sold a lot of magazines, especially in Australia and New Zealand, with this article. And so that really lays out that case. Al Jazeera also has laid that case out with their investigations. There's an Al Jazeera documentary which we featured on the Sunday screening that's out today. I think we've got a trailer for that. I don't know if you've got that trailer handy, the AJ trailer, Hesher, and maybe we could watch that for a moment.
Yeah, give me a moment here to make sure I have that.
So that's a huge piece of evidentiary presentation there, forensic work by Al Jazeera. That, I mean, this film, anybody who's watched this film, it's unbelievably accurate and dramatic, stunning, depressing, frightening, but a brilliant piece of documentary film work by Al Jazeera. They really brought their A game on this. They've been working on this for probably 8 months or something like that. So they released it intentionally today, yesterday and today, because they want to preempt this festival of victimology that Israel's pushing for October 7th. I mean, when you listen to the discourse in the U.S., they're trying to create this false equivalency like Piers Morgan does every night, that somehow Hamas breaking through the prison fences after a 76-year occupation or whatever, that's somehow equivalent, and the terror that caused and the lives lost. And of course, all lives are precious. We don't want to see any lives lost, especially civilian lives, whether they're Israeli or Palestinian. Of course, any human would think that and feel that. But he's saying, and everyone else is saying, and the U.S. media is saying, and the Israelis are saying, and Netanyahu is saying, that what happened on October 7th to Israel is much, much more horrific and much, much more of a concern for the world, the natives breaking out of the prison, than what Israel has done to the Palestinians for the last 12 months, which has been an industrial scale slaughter and a genocide that's still happening now, which Israel has opened up a new genocide front in South Lebanon. And somehow that's not of any concern to anybody. That's just them fighting terrorism, which is kind of breathtaking that anyone would make such an insane argument. That if you look at the true figures in terms of the dead in Gaza, if you count excess deaths and all the bodies that haven't been counted, we're very close to 100,000. And by the way, a peer-reviewed British journal called The Lancet, world famous publication, they're talking about the true death toll as a result of the siege placed on Gaza, as a result of the carpet bombing and the indiscriminate use of one of the most powerful militaries in the world against a civilian population in the most densely populated area in the world, Gaza City. As a result of that, the numbers are now, in true numbers, pushing up towards 200,000 dead. So that's a Holocaust by anybody's measure. And then there's the issue of what Israel did on October 7th, which is now proven, factually proven. I wrote that in January and February, published in the end of February, and all those references on October 7th of Israel invoking the Hannibal Directive, killing. No one knows because they've kind of closed the investigation on the Israeli side. But if you add up the reporting that I basically fused together and sifted through all the Israeli reports, added up the numbers from dead soldiers, separated those, dead civilians who were fleeing from the Nova Festival and the kibbutzes, those Shin Bet officers who were killed, police officers, those killed by the Israeli military could be in the hundreds, 200, 300. It's very difficult to say. They don't want those numbers to be made public. They don't want to investigate. And even to today, and I'll hand it over to Freddie in a moment, because the Israeli prime minister released a video that was targeting the French people because he was upset that the French that Macron and the French government wanted to hold back arms now against, and that's very much so because of Lebanon and France's very, very historic and tight relationship with Lebanon. But he's saying beheaded babies, beheaded people. Netanyahu is still running with the beheaded babies, which has been thoroughly debunked a long time ago. We were debunking it on October 11th. I'll post an episode of The Gaggle I did with Peter Lavelle and George Samuel, who weren't afraid to talk about this on October 10th. It aired on October 11th, and we already had debunked the beheaded babies, like on October 9th on social media, 10th Spaces, and then on The Gaggle we did it again. And so they're still running with this. So it's pretty extraordinary. Here we are 12 months later, and Israel's wanting to drag the United States and the world into a third world war rather than halt what is clearly an ongoing genocide against the native Palestinian population in Gaza, and they're beginning a new front on to commit mass atrocities and perhaps genocide in South Lebanon. That's not an exaggeration. This is historic. We've never had to face this in the modern era. No one wants to restrain this rogue state. So I'll leave it. You got that video?
I do. Yeah, I've got it all queued up here. Let's take a look.
The West cannot hide. They cannot claim ignorance. Nobody can say they didn't know.
Regarde, je vais montrer son dos, tu vas rigoler, regarde. Ils l'ont torturé pour le faire parler.
Lots of people say Israeli forces shouldn't be allowed to take cameras and phones into combat. I'm glad that they are allowed to, because it allows the world to witness what's happening.
Wow. You know, Patrick, I couldn't help but notice the other day I was scanning through the streaming services, and on the dreaded Hulu, they have a documentary they're just put out, I think about a week ago, and it's called "We Will Dance Again: Surviving October 7th." And I couldn't even click in. I kind of watched the trailer, but here's the one-liner on it, or the short description is: a harrowing documentary about the October 7th Hamas attack on the Nova Music Festival, a celebration of music, peace, and freedom that turned into a killing field as 400 festival goers were slaughtered or abducted. 24 survivors tell unimaginable stories of courage, humanity, and heroism, illustrated by the actual cell phone footage they recorded while fleeing or hiding. I'm guessing we won't see anything like we saw in that AJ trailer there. What do you think?
You won't, and you won't see any footage of the IDF Apache helicopters supplied by the United States mowing down Israelis who are trying to flee the Nova Festival. But yet we have testimonies from Israeli military officials, people in the Air Force, on Israeli media that have testified that that happened. And they were doing artillery fire into the kibbutzes, and they had invoked what's called the Hannibal Directive, or a mass Hannibal. In other words, don't let Hamas take any hostages, kill them all. They created a kill zone. And if Israelis were in that kill zone, they're going to die as well. And they did. And what's interesting about all these, commemorative documentaries and coverage that Israel is pushing out, and that the U.S. media regurgitate and push, is they show the images of all those burnt out cars. And many of those are festival goers fleeing the festival scene. And Hamas did not have the weapons to incinerate automobiles, and definitely not 80 or 90 automobiles. that are all piled up in the yard. They've all been scrapped by now because they wanted to destroy the evidence probably. There's probably still a few of these cars left. But Hamas did not possess the weaponry, nor does it make any sense that they would, because they were already fleeing, or they're already sort of on their mission or leaving to go back to Gaza anyway. Okay, only high-powered military gunships, tanks, that's who had the firepower to do that to all of those automobiles and incinerate the people inside them. And there's also Palestinian militants or armed resistance fighters in those cars too. And early reports suggest that some of those were counted as dead on the other side because they couldn't ID the bodies and the hostages that they took, that they were going to bring back to Gaza to use as leverage to release one or many of the, at the time, 6,000 Palestinian hostages kept by Israel in the dungeon system that they maintain. Nobody talks about that. And when we talk about hostages, bring them home, bring the 100 home. Israel's killed almost half of their hostages through airstrikes already. They've already invoked the Hannibal Doctrine to their hostages. And nobody wants to talk about the now 8 or 9,000 or 10,000, who knows what the numbers are, but they've increased rapidly, Palestinian prisoners, many of them children, many of them teenagers, and many of them women that, according to the testimonies of those released so far, have been raped, tortured, continuous torture, Abu Ghraib style. Emaciated bodies, people destroyed for life. Many of them probably didn't survive. Israel's famously gone and dumped dead bodies into Gaza and turned around and drove back. They've done this on multiple occasions. Dead bodies from one of the hospitals they destroyed, or prisoners. I don't know the details of it, but that's not a problem for the Western media, who's immersed in righteous indignation still about October 7th. It's pretty incredible. So, the case is there. It's already been adjudicated by many very qualified independent journalists, by Al Jazeera, by Middle East Eye, by 21st Century Wire, by The Gray Zone, by Mondovice, by Electronic Intifada, by the Israeli media themselves. All we did was pull all the reports together and line them up in that article, which I've reposted on X, so people can read it there. But it's all in here. There's over 5,600 word article with everything, debunking everything. But that was written back in February. It's still very relevant and on point. I could probably do a revision of that and update it with some of the new evidence and new, kind of investigations and additional analysis. But it's a bottomless pit. Freddie will tell you, once you dive into these sort of seminal events, and you might not emerge for a very long time. There's the endless amount of research and evidence that you could get into.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Freddie, let's bring you in here. So I want to put this on the screen here. You tweeted out on X, French President Emmanuel Macron's call for an arms embargo on Israel provokes a reaction from Israeli genocidal Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. France doesn't care about your threats. Netanyahu, you are a barbarian war criminal and soon will be judged as such. You are a threat to world peace. And I've actually got his response here if you want me to play it, but we'll pass it to you for a moment here for your analysis.
Yeah, well, Hesher, it's a very interesting situation with the French president speaking on the fringe of the 19th Francophonie Summit, very important meeting, reminding the countries around the world that are bound by the French language, and that of course includes Lebanon. So it was interesting that Macron, during an interview with France Inter, decided to remind key points with regards to where France is standing in the context of this ongoing slaughter in Gaza and the promise of more slaughter in Lebanon. And I think that the French president was drawing a line, not revisiting the friendship between Israel and France is something extremely well established. And I don't think it has been challenged by any of the comments of Emmanuel Macron. I think what we are seeing here is this is going on, and this conflict has been going on simply because sponsors outside of West Asia have brought in a huge, tremendous amount of weaponry, intelligence, and what have you, to support the Israeli war agenda. And I think what Macron was trying to say is that whether you want to call it an embargo or stopping the armed trades towards Israel seems a reasonable thing to do. There are 80 plus countries associated with France which also support the idea of a ceasefire not only in Gaza but also in Lebanon. So if you will, all in all, I think Macron is realizing the political reality of supporting Israel, and I think he wanted to make sure that people understand that France is no longer, has not been trading in arms with Israel, at least not during the beginning of the conflict. I've been looking for documents that would state the contrary, but I haven't found any. Now, it doesn't mean that no weapons are going through France to get to Israel. And for those that know my Twitter account, you'll see some movement, Twitter that I made this morning, discussing actually how Germany is using France as a way to get their armed equipment, their military supply to Israel, going from primarily from Leipzig and Dresden all the way down to south of France near Marseille, and then a base going directly to Cyprus, Paphos. So we can clearly see that there is still procurements going on. Is France doing a dirty deal? We do not know. We don't have the proof, so I can't give you that. But what I can tell you for sure is that Germany is still trading and is still sending heavy equipment to the Israeli via Cyprus, which seems to be the hub for Israeli supply. So that's what we are seeing at the moment. And I think Macron, in this particular instance, it's a symbolic, very symbolic, if you will, kind of statement, reminding Netanyahu that there are international laws, and he has passed basically the Rubicon. He's passed that red line a long time ago, and I think no government that calls itself a democratic government can really survive openly supporting the war effort Israel is engaged with, especially with this recent event in Lebanon. Terrorist attacks against civilians, even if they're Hezbollah workers, it doesn't matter. So many of them were civilians, 2,000 people injured or killed. And then, of course, this campaign of bombing, taking out the Secretary General of Hezbollah, Nasrallah being taken out as well. So a lot of things is going on, way too much. And I think in relation to October the 7th, many people today wonder how, with the United States spending $27 billion in defense on Israel, how can Israel cannot afford to have been aware of what went down on September of the Octobers? And I'm, as I say, I've been investigating this for a very long time, along many other investigative journalists, and many come to the same conclusion. It's really hard to believe that Israel was not aware of what was in the pipeline here. But push that aside for a second, I think we can all see that there is a growing fear amongst the reasonable people of the world that the onslaught that went on for almost a year now in Gaza is about to start in Lebanon. But Lebanon is not Palestine, and I think the Israeli will come to learn that very quickly. And there's going to be some very interesting movement in Lebanon that we need all to watch. What's going on inside of Lebanon, looking at the politics. We all understand how Lebanon has suffered from dysfunctional political spectrums, the inability to put together a government that could allies all the Kurds, the Druze, the Shia, the Sunnite, and everybody working alongside to repair this broken country and to bring it back to its former glory. And I think that we're going to start to see now some game being played that, and I'm happy to obviously discuss that further during this conversation.
Yeah, it is. It's a real tragedy. It's a beautiful country, very special place for me. Obviously, having been there many times, spent a lot of time there, lived there, worked there, family roots of sorts there, literally, and it's very disturbing because the Lebanese are born fighters. Let's get that straight. They're born fighters. You're born in Lebanon. You're born a fighter, male or female. And so you're used to adversity. They thrive in adversity. They're very adaptable. But this is something else. Israel just destroyed a mosque. I just look at the news wires right now. Now they've bombed all the mosques practically in Gaza, all the universities they've destroyed, a lot of the historic Christian churches, Orthodox churches in Gaza, all the schools, UN shelters. There's nothing that they haven't bombed in Gaza, Israel. Now they're bombing mosques in Lebanon. This is a different thing. Okay, this is going to backfire so badly because what Israel's trying to do is to reignite sectarian division in Lebanon. That's clearly what they're doing. They want to reignite the old allegiances and the divisions that governed the Lebanese civil war. And let's be honest, they still exist. A lot of the children of the sectarianists, be they a Christian or Sunni or whatnot, those children adopt their parents' politics. Okay. So especially the Christian factions that allied with Israel who took Beirut and then were beaten back and kicked out and by Shia militias as well and alliances thereof. And also the Americans were kicked out of Lebanon in 1983. So, but there's a lot of bad blood under the bridge in Lebanon. They're trying to, U.S. is trying to reignite this. The reason they want to reignite sectarianism in Lebanon is because they want to get the Christians, Sunnis, to say, oh, this is all because of Hezbollah. Hezbollah's brought this on the country, that we need to get rid of them, get them out of politics, get them out of parliament, kill their political wing, like they did with the Iraqi Ba'athist party and Saddam Hussein's party. There was a de-Baathification, if you remember, in Iraq. Okay, that was part of it when America wanted to tear any potential opposition by the root. They want to do this with Hezbollah. It's going to be difficult, I would say even impossible to do in South Lebanon. I think this is just delusional at this point, without destroying half the country. And if they destroy half the country, the region and the world will turn against Israel in such an intense way. And those mosques in Lebanon, those are paid for, some of them, with Gulf money. And the Saudis don't appreciate seeing this happen today. And if it's the first of many, the schools are paid for by Saudi money, Kuwaiti money, Emirati money,
That's right.
Bahrain, Qatari money. They've invested in Lebanon because Lebanon's an important part of the Middle East, important part for the Gulf states. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it is, Patrick. It's an important part, and we saw over the years, at least the Gang of Five, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, Jordan, and then of course the US and France to try to reform and to help Lebanon reform a government, but they came up short, first of all, simply because the reality and the historical, as you described it extremely well, the reality and the historical reality of Lebanon makes it extremely hard. And the solution must come from inside. It cannot come from outside. And you can clearly see that as well with the the regular Lebanese army, which has been basically on the on life support. Really, it's just been depending on external aid. It's absolutely not capable of sustaining itself as a regular army. So it also requires a lot of aid coming from outside. So Lebanon, because of its broken status, is in desperate need of everything, literally. And some people will try to take advantage of that. And the first one that obviously tried to do that was the Israel and the United States. And you remember the time with this ongoing conversation, which was a kind of a way of trying to normalize the relationship in between Lebanon and Israel by using the old school Samuel Pizarro kind of style of putting business first and hopefully create ties that will be of use from a diplomatic point of view. But they didn't work very well. And Nasrallah was very quick at saying, it's not because we can cooperate on some Gaza maritime borders and, some kind of a, business that means that we recognize the state of Israel. So I think that was something that failed. And O'Steins, I think, clearly realized very quickly that this was not going to be a party, that's not going to be a pleasant party to keep on trying convincing the Hezbollah of recognizing Israel when Israel has been obviously described by many, including the United Nations, as a state responsible for war crimes and conducting a regime of apartheid and slaughtering, basically genociding a population, denying them of their right to build a future for themselves, and denying them their lands. So again, all that is so strong in a history that I don't think any US, French, or even Arab intervention is going to solve, or at least cauterize the Lebanese cause, especially on the Palestinian subject. And this is the reason why you can see the Hezbollah is still so powerful in Lebanon. It's not because everybody hates Hezbollah and Hezbollah is like ISIS or Al Qaeda. It's not the case at all. Hezbollah is really a political party, and if you look at even France has never really described Hezbollah as a terrorist group. It's recognized it as a political party that has a lot to offer to the public, to the civilians in Lebanon, and contributed to the life of the people of Lebanon in Beirut and other places as well along the borders. So as I said, the propaganda is always going to describe them as an act of resistance that works on behalf of Iran and, of course, a terrorist group. But these very same terrorist groups are those that were fighting ISIS and Al Qaeda in Syria. So again, and the Iranians were exactly the same, fighting against ISIS and Al Qaeda. So what's going on here? We're told the terrorists are fighting the terrorists. Something is not computing here. Something is not making sense. And I think what's not making sense is that we're pointing the finger at Iran. We're pointing the finger at Lebanon or at Ansarallah, the Houthis in Yemen. And we're telling these people are the terrorists when clearly these are just liberation groups that are trying to point the finger at Israel and saying Israel is a rogue state, Israel is a criminal state. And the recent leadership shows how inhuman and how much they are the terrorists in this entire story, and that any, as I say, responsible state in the Western world should clearly draw the line and not accept what they've been accepted for a year since October the 7th. And I think we're going to see some change, Patrick. I think it's coming, and I think Israel is going to be for a major surprise.
Yeah, I think more like a rude awakening. You brought up a good point, Freddie, which we should address very briefly. Correctly, you said France recognizes the Hezbollah, the political party that holds not an outright majority, if I'm not mistaken, but a near majority in Lebanese parliament. They recognize the political arm under pressure from the United States and the other NATO allies. I believe in probably around 2012, 2013, they proscribed the armed militant wing or militia wing of Hezbollah as a terrorist group. But they've done that separation, as have some other European countries, and a lot of countries in the world don't recognize Hezbollah as a terrorist entity. They don't, but the United States does. Most of the NATO countries, if I'm not mistaken, do, if not all, except for France. France makes that careful distinction, and Hezbollah, it's important to point out, this group would not exist if not for the U.S. and the Israeli occupation of Lebanon. Okay, they were born out of mainly the Israeli occupation of South Lebanon. It's indigenous resistance, armed resistance to an illegal occupation by Israel. There would be no Hezbollah if not for Israel invading and occupying Lebanon. Okay, it's a fact. Just like there would be no Hamas if not for Israel's illegal, brutal occupation in Palestine, would not exist. That said, Israel helped fund and actually helped to found Hamas. That's a historical fact. This was done Shin Bet, and the Israeli leadership wanted to create a counterweight to the PLO at the time. So they thought it was a brilliant idea. Turned out they no longer could control it, but they actually wanted to have that militant movement or armed resistance movement, or what they would call extremist, or what they then labeled terrorist, as in charge in Gaza, because it gave Israel the excuse to have increasingly more brutal policies and to keep a 18-year siege on the Gaza Strip, denying it of essentials. Israelis will tell you, oh, it could have been the Singapore of the Middle East. They say, oh, yes, it was great. Before Hamas arrived in Gaza, it was olive groves, and Israelis and Palestinians were holding hands and skipping through the hills, having picnics together. And it was the Paris. They're saying Gaza was the Paris of the Middle East. No, it wasn't.
Paris.
It wasn't. It's look at it now, and who turned it into what it is now, which is a horror escape. Israel did, and the United States did, backing Israel and all these policies. But back to the point, what you also said, Freddie, is important. If we did a Venn diagram, all of the organizations that were fighting ISIS and Al Qaeda in Syria and Iraq, all of them, the Syrian Arab Army, Hezbollah, the PMU Hashd al-Shabi from Iraq, the Quds forces from Iran, led by Qasem Soleimani, they were fighting, and Russia, they were fighting ISIS and Al Qaeda in Syria, right? So, and all those groups, most of them, except for Russia, is a little bit neutral on Israel compared to Middle Eastern countries, like in the axis of resistance. But all the axis of resistance countries were fighting Al Qaeda, plus opposing Israel's illegal occupation in South Lebanon and in Palestine. So if you oppose Israel, you get labeled a terrorist by the United States, by Israel and its allies. It's as simple as that. The Venn diagram is simple. And if you look at how that shapes up on the board, that's pretty shocking. That means that Israel supports de facto Al Qaeda and ISIS because it wants to label those fighting those crazed actual terrorist militants, armed, back, trained, funded by the West and their Gulf state allies, keep them in the terrorist bracket. They belong in the terrorist bracket, but then to label Hezbollah as a terrorist group fighting the extremists that America claims as their sworn enemy, ISIS. It does.
That's right.
And Trump, under the pressure from the Israelis, did this assassination of Qasem Soleimani, fell into a trap set by Israel intelligence, and left the U.S. to do the deed at the end after Israel peeled off at the last minute, saying, "Oh."
Maybe not.
Yeah, no, they knew exactly what they're doing. They manipulated the United States into a geopolitical situation that they would never be able to resolve in the future, and to create Iran as an enemy of the United States on a very, very deep level. And Trump fell into a brilliant trap by the Israelis, took the bait, ran with it. And nobody wants to own up to the fact of what actually happened there and what it really represents. So Hezbollah is the indigenous armed resistance movement in South Lebanon to prevent Israel from invading and occupying again, which they're now attempting to do. And there would be no Hezbollah if Lebanon had a military with air defense, an air force, tanks, proper equipment. But guess why the Lebanese army, the official Lebanese army, doesn't have any of that? Because the United States determines what they can and can't have.
Yep.
So they can't defend their own territory. As soon as Israel was preparing an invasion, most of the Lebanese army had to pack up and leave their positions in South Lebanon for the most part, because they don't have the equipment to fight Israel, and nor would they want to.
I think the Lebanese government is waking up to that. Perhaps not, everyone, because some have been awake for a very long time. And what was very interesting to me in terms of inside Lebanon, to see the move in between Joseph Aoun, the general of the Lebanese army at the moment, which has been kind of always a target for the French and the Americans and the Saudis, the Egyptians as well. Everybody wants him to be the next president, but he doesn't seem very interested. But I think he's really starting to see through the lies. And also, this is an intelligent man. He's not related to Michel Aoun, the former president of Lebanon. So just to be clear about that, this is just someone that has a great sense of strategy, but a great intelligence in his approach on how to secure the sovereignty of his countries. And I think it's very clear when you see Joseph Aoun coming very close to someone like Nabi Berri, for example, the Speaker of the Parliament of Lebanon. I mean, this is probably the oldest speakers of parliament you'll find anywhere in the world. I mean, when I was born, this guy was already a Speaker of the Parliament in Lebanon. So a very interesting guy. He was born in Sierra Leone. He was actually from a Lebanese Shia family. They were traders in Sierra Leone at the time, but a very interesting legal scholar, extremely intelligent, great businessman, but very really astute politicians, and someone that's someone will come and see, to see exactly how to not offend, but also how to guarantee the sovereignty of Lebanon. And I think that seeing Joseph Aoun a few days ago coming and meeting with Nabi Berri is a very encouraging sign. And I think some even already are starting to say that the regular army of Lebanon is not going to move. It's not going to trap the Hezbollah. It's not going to apply a sandwich strategy, and pushing the Hezbollah in a trap against the Israeli forces.
That's what sectarians in the U.S. want.
Yes.
They want to get Lebanon to somehow, or old sectarian factions, to create that sandwich between the IDF. They want the IDF. I've heard sectarians on Twitter Spaces. Yep. I was on the panel with them. They're calling for, and one guy, ex-U.S. State Department employee, saying, we need Israel to come into Lebanon to sort out Hezbollah. They'll do the job. So they're calling for those people in America. And some of those are ex-Lebanese, expats, sectarians, other people. They're calling for a new civil war to embroil Lebanon for the next 10 or 15 or whatever, 20 years. That's what they are effectively calling for. And nobody's saying, I mean, it's just preposterous. But this is what the United States wants. The U.S. are so cynical and so Machiavellian. They've been trying to get sectarian war going in Lebanon for the longest time. They do so by funding certain groups, not funding other groups through USAID, effectively buying the loyalty. That's right. Or giving out U.S. passports to some sectarian groups, but not others. They've effectively divided Lebanese society through money, through NGOs, through grants, finance, all sorts of things, business contracts, political support. This is how they do it. America, that is what they do in Lebanon. And Mike Pompeo and people like this kind of were very bolshy and open about what they wanted, how they wanted to, give Lebanon a facelift. I mean, what business does the United States have doing that to another sovereign country? But the corruption that Freddie's talking about has really paralyzed the government. There is really no strong central government there. And to be honest, there hasn't been for a very long time. the entire system is confessional. It's set up by proportional representation based on population demographics of the 1960s. And things have changed rapidly. That's why you have this problem. And the colonialists love this. They loved it in Iraq, and they love it in Lebanon. The ideal partner for the British or the Americans is to put a minority faction in power, and back them and arm them and give them everything they want. Then they can start playing around with the country and then flip the regime later. We know the playbook has been done already many times. So, but they don't care one bit about the people in that country. There's even the U.S. consulate in there. They live in a bubble. They don't even go. They won't go out to a movie without security detail. And this is during a time when Lebanon has been very safe. That's how the U.S. diplomats and people like that, they live in another world. They don't know Lebanon. They don't know Lebanese people.
And they don't know the ties. They don't know the ties with the people surrounding the countries surrounding Lebanon. You can see, Najib Mikati, the acting prime minister of Lebanon, is someone that has an excellent relationship with Bashar al-Assad. This is someone that's probably the richest man in Lebanon today. But this is someone that has always understood the complexity of Lebanon and the political spectrums, and anybody that stays alive, anybody that's actually been able to stay in position of power, or at least some kind of powers in Lebanon, have understood that there needs to be a balance. But one thing that everyone seems to agree more and more is that Israel cannot be dealt with rationally. And that's extremely new, I think, in terms of, over the past 10 years. I think when you see Sunni getting so close to Shias, and even the Druze and the Christians are starting to say, look, it doesn't matter how different is right now, is that our country is at risk of, being genocide by Israel, because we saw what they are capable of doing in Gaza. And they could do exactly the same if we don't unite. And I think this unity is shaping up as we speak. There's going to be country over political, survival. And as you said, this intervention from outside, from the US, France, and other countries, especially Saudi Arabia and Qatar, is trying to lecture Lebanon about, democracy or some kind of unity and peacefulness, and everybody should be singing Kumbaya together, forgetting all that has happened in the past in the name of commercial profit. I think it's just ludicrous, and it's not going to happen. And I'm quite clear now, I'm getting better pictures that I think that Israel is more and more isolated. It's become so isolated that we're going to see more and more countries putting pressures on Israel at many different levels, diplomatic, but also commercial and so on, isolating Israel to the point of no recovery. So even though it doesn't matter what the outcome is going to be, Israel will never recover from what they've did. And I think France is starting to realize that. And some people in some countries will be asked to take a stand, and say, well, this is where we stand now. We were a friend of Israel, but Israel is a rogue state. It's simply not comply with international humanitarian law, not with at least international or customary laws, and is really basically the nest of all trouble that we are seeing in West Asia. This instability serves the interests of the United States. That's why they're pumping so much money into it, and that's why they are protecting Israel. But how long can they do that? This is not survivable. And even Trump, which everybody expects to be the next president of the United States, needs to realize that the real enemy here is not Iran. The real enemy here is Israel as it stands. And it's not talking about the Jewish people at all, as you can notice. This is really about a state. This is about a rogue politicians that have political interests and ambitions and ideology that's unfortunately cannot sustain themselves without killing, slaughtering innocent civilians, something that simply has no future in the 21st century. And I hope many countries will will come to punish Israel for what they've done to these poor people.
I think it's clear now that this is a colonial settler project. It's people are now come to the realization this is a European problem that got exported to the Middle East, that the British and the Americans used as a beachhead, as Freddie says, a very important imperial beachhead in the region to control, to keep the governments and the Arab nationalist states unstable, so that they could work with the Emirates, who have all the oil, and that was the priority for a while. Now oil is ubiquitous globally, not so much of a big deal in terms of U.S. purchasing, but in terms of geopolitics, still important. But then the usefulness of Israel in that sense, Freddie, its sell by date, I think, has passed. And at some point, Israel becomes more of a liability than an asset. Because of Israel, if they retaliate against Iran and they say they're going to hit nuclear sites, and Lindsey Graham's pumping this up and Trump's pumping it up as well. Let's suppose the U.S. hits a nuclear site or kills a lot of Iranians, and Iran responds as they promised they would, and pretty hard. If the U.S. is seen to be a partner in this, is the U.S. willing to sacrifice its total footprint in the region, so Israel can continue a genocide in Gaza? Because that's what it comes down to. Hassan Nasrallah and Hezbollah were negotiations through intermediaries, including France, about how to come to some kind of agreement for a ceasefire. And what Hezbollah wanted was a ceasefire in Gaza, an end to the genocide, and they're willing to make concessions to Israel. Israel decided they didn't want to make any of those concessions. They didn't want to end the genocide.
That's right.
And they decided at that moment to assassinate Hassan Nasrallah. Okay,
that's
why he wasn't killed. He was killed. It wasn't because Iran didn't flex their muscles enough and hit Israel hard, like all the desktop generals and warhawks on X claim. The people on X who want to see World War III so badly so that they can pump up their engagement and get more money from their monetization. This is how a lot of people unfortunately think. Some of the pundits who we follow and watch.
You see, Patrick, the frustration of Emmanuel Macron that we've seen, in his various statements, clearly comes from the very fact that Hassan Nasrallah was very clear that he was prepared to entertain this ceasefire. And I think that Macron and the United States were talking at the time, and I think the U.S. kind of seems to be like, well, we'd love that to happen. I think it will be better if it can happen. But Israel was never on board. That was the problem. Israel was never on board on that. They were never on board, and they already made a decision, because when Israel made a decision, say we're going to go in Lebanon, we're going to invade Lebanon, and we're going to go and punish and get Hezbollah, because we can sacrifice maybe a couple of hundreds, couple of thousand Israeli IDF troops. It doesn't matter. When enough have died, the US will come anyway and provide everything that we need to finish the job, like they did in Gaza. Because at the end of the day, without the United States, I don't think the IDF would have survived Gaza and the Hamas. So we can clearly see that this is really the intent here. And for me, the intent is everything. It's more than the action. The intent is you can discuss whatever we want. We're going to go out there and we're going to go and take Lebanon from you. There's no interest in what the American wants. They don't care. They don't respect the United States because they feel they control. I mean, if you walk into the Congress or the House and everybody is lining up and applauding you for minutes after minutes, nonstop, you're a glorified criminal. I mean, of course, it's just, why would you be worried? And these people are,
Freddie, I don't know if you saw this or not, because I shared this with you on our chat earlier today, but BFM TV, which is one of your main broadcasters in France, last night reported that the French government caved and will keep sending weapons to Israel while this issue of arms is being negotiated. So Macron had made a declaration just 24 hours previously. And then Netanyahu released this video threatening and insulting the French. And it seems like the French have somewhat caved. Okay, this issue is still on the table, obviously. But I want to play this, Hesher, if you have that Netanyahu video, and I want to get Freddie's visceral reaction to it, because it's like nothing I've ever seen. The gumption of this is unbelievable. I don't know if you got that video or not, Hesher.
Yeah. Let's take a look.
Yeah.
I have a message. I have a message for President Macron. Today, Israel is defending itself on 7 fronts against the enemies of civilization. We're fighting in Gaza against Hamas, those savages who murdered, raped, beheaded, and burned our people on October 7th. We're fighting in Lebanon against Hezbollah, the most heavily armed terror organization in the world, which was planning an even greater massacre than October 7th on our northern border, and that has rocketed Israeli towns and cities for nearly a year. We're fighting against the Houthis in Yemen and the Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria that together have launched hundreds of drones and missile attacks against Israel. We're fighting against terrorists in Judea and Samaria who are trying to murder civilians in the heart of our cities. And we're fighting against Iran, which last week fired over 200 ballistic missiles directly at Israel, and which stands behind the 7-front war against Israel. As Israel fights the forces of barbarism led by Iran, all civilized countries should be standing firmly by Israel's side. Yet President Macron and some other Western leaders are now calling for an arms embargo against Israel. Shame on them. Is Iran imposing an arms embargo on Hezbollah, on the Houthis, on Hamas, and on its other proxies? Of course not. The axis of terror stands together. But countries who supposedly oppose this terror axis call for an arms embargo on Israel. What a disgrace. Well, let me tell you this. Israel will win with or without their support. But their shame will continue long after the war is won. For in defending ourselves against this barbarism, Israel is defending civilizations against those who seek to impose a dark age of fanaticism on all of us. Rest assured, Israel will fight until the battle is won, for our sake and for the sake of the peace and security of the entire world.
Does he think that he's king of the world?
Wow.
Guys, I mean, he's talking like he's king of the world. He believes that he's king of the world.
He's a delusional person, and every single word, if you take the time to actually review this video in detail, and I can tell you every single word is a lie. This is from the beginning.
I got to ask, would Israel continue and win this battle without the help of these countries that he's talking about? Would they have even started all this without them? Whose bombs are leveling everything in Gaza? Are those things that are manufactured in Israel with Israeli taxpayer dollars? I mean, riddle me that.
Nope.
No, it makes possible. And I think that October the 7th, it's a reminder. It's a reminder that because of certain countries from the West, the so-called allied of Israel, they are the ones that have made this possible. And that's why the ICJ is in a conundrum, because if it was just one country, it's not the United States, maybe Austria or Greece or whatever, that would have been different and that would have been dealt with swiftly. But we're talking about, main powers, top NATO members involved in procuring weapons, support, intelligence, ISR, you name it, so much. It's a mystery how Israel has not even been able to defeat Hamas after 1 year. What they've really achieved is killing almost 8,000 civilians, or let's say 40,000 civilians in Gaza, mainly women and children. That's what they've achieved. They've not achieved any real military objectives. And for those that have known these countries and that knows the relationship between Israel and the Hamas, they will know that it's not because Israel doesn't know where the tunnels are, because they built many of them, and it sponsors many of them. So this is really, as I said, this is a very strange war. It is really about destroying a population. This is what's really bothering me with that. This has had nothing to do with religion. I couldn't care. You can believe in anything you want. That's up to you, not to me. But what matters here is that people are sponsoring openly genocide, war crime, crime against humanity, and calling the other guys that's trying to defend these crimes or against these crimes the terrorists. This just simply can't fly. And we need all to draw a line. This is it. October 7th today tomorrow is a reminder. It's a reminder that we cannot afford to go for another year looking at the ICG or the ICC to issue an errant. We need basically the United Nations to do their job or to go down, because they're not serving the purpose. They are not delivering the mandate which they were entrusted with. And there's no reason any longer for member of the United Nations to allow that to happen. And the United Nations Security Council must understand, and people in the General Assembly need to understand that they have the power, not the United Nations Security Council. The UNC can be dismantled, can be reshuffled, veto can be taken away. There's a lot of things they can do internally to bring back justice, at the center of the conversation. Right. And that, unless it's going to happen, we don't need United Nations. Then we better have in the BRICS setting up something for us, something that we can rely upon. Say, okay, let's be fair. All people are asking is for fairness, and right now all we're getting is hegemony and the control, of Western powers, and they're trying to, to hang on to this power they've had for so long, knowing clearly that it's basically escaping them, and it's a fatality. It's going to happen because what they're doing is accelerating the process.
And just a quick plug here. This book, Hezbollah, Born with a Vengeance by Hala Jabber, who's a friend of the show and great author. This was published in 1998, and it was the definitive history of Hezbollah. It's not that long. You can still get it on Amazon in paperback or hard copy. I'm definitely plugging it. I've been in possession of this since 2004 or 5. So I've had this hard copy, and it's really important because this will give you the timelines. I do read some of the Western books as well. I look at to see how they're framing the analysis, and there's good facts in there, although it's bent a certain way politically. Calling it a terrorist group, but this book is by Hala Jabber, who's on Twitter Spaces, X a lot. She's a great journalist. She wrote the first definitive history of Hezbollah, so I'm definitely plugging that, as well as the Al Jazeera documentary that's out today on Gaza. We've reposted that at 21st Century Wire at the Sunday screening, so you can watch that there. You can watch it on X. It's available on YouTube as well. We put it up just for the posterity's sake because it's excellent. But give that film to anybody that you want to educate on what's happened over the last 12 months. This Al Jazeera documentary. And anyone who sits through that and watches the whole thing and still believes what Fox and CNN and the BBC have been dishing out for the last 12 months, I don't think it's possible if you can sit through that film and watch the entire 120 odd minutes. It's so well done. So props to Al Jazeera. I'm a big critic of their reporting, by the way, because they've been awful in Syria, and Qatar has been awful to Syria. But for some reason, on the issue of Palestine, they're one of the best large media outlets. So that's however you want to cut and slice and dice that one, but that's what it is.
That's why they're being kicked out of the West Bank. That's because they're just presence. They're entrusted by the population, and they really gather a lot of very interesting information. We get it live, and we get it as real as it gets. It's very raw, and it's shocking, and they've played an important role in exposing Israeli crimes as well. So it's good to see that they were able to do that, and they carry on doing it what they do.
I'm told there's a new documentary out on Bibi Netanyahu himself also. I don't have the info in front of me. I think it's called Bibi or something like that. But it looked like it was very. It looked like there was a lot of opposition to it being shown to Western audiences. I wish I had the name in front of me.
Was it flattering to Netanyahu, or was it against him?
Oh, it was against him.
Against him. Okay, so
yeah, there's the gray zone as well. The gray zone is coming out with something tomorrow as well. I think Max Blumenthal and Propaganda & Co. I think they came together and they did a documentary, just basically picking up all the lies that have been told on October the 7th. And you can literally do a very long movie if you were to put them one next to each others. But I think it's going to be a 30-40 minutes documentary, but something that's definitely worth looking forward to, just for those that still have a doubt, because I can see the terms are still used. You can see in that video that you just showed, Hesher, with Netanyahu keep on talking about burning bodies and everything that has done, and Hezbollah is going to do worse at the northern border of Israel. Just this ongoing claims that is not founded in truth.
Hezbollah can't do anything at the northern border because all those towns and villages are empty.
They're empty.
Oh, they're empty. It's a ghost town. There's only Israeli military there. So what's Netanyahu talking about? This guy only knows how to lie. He's total psychopath. There's no
pathological liar. Yeah.
Even his psychologist committed suicide because after working with him, it drove him over the edge. I mean, you're dealing with real evil there. I mean, his nickname is Satanyahu, and this is what people in the region call him. And I'm not going to argue with that. I mean, it's pretty much the embodiment of, just the most base evil you can possibly imagine. But I have a news item I want to share with you guys. But before I do that, I want to mention something. Syria is very important in all this, especially regarding Lebanon. And one of the things that the U.S. and Israel and NATO had successfully done is use the Syrian issue to split Muslims in the Middle East and globally, to paint Bashar al-Assad as against the Sunnis, and that he slaughtered and starved, and all these fake stories about famine and all these sort of things. We debunked all of these at 21st Century Wire over that period we're covering it. But a lot of these things successfully made it through the mainstream, and they triggered Muslim populations around the world. And this was used as the recruiting mechanism for people to come and fight in Syria to overthrow the regime. Okay. In the same exact way, they ran a similar global propaganda campaign to recruit people for the international brigades during the Spanish Civil War in the mid-1930s. That's prior to World War II breaking out. Same type of thing. Come fight the good fight against fascism and oppression. They tried to do this with the global Muslim population to say this was the Alawites and the Kafirs in charge in Damascus were brutalizing the Sunnis, even though the majority of the Syrian army is Sunni and all the top generals are Sunni. So it wasn't a sectarian issue. The West and Israel wanted to make it a sectarian issue, and that helped to recruit all of the what became all the terrorist factions running amok in Syria, many of whom are still running amok. And Idlib is an Al-Qaeda, ISIS occupied Islamic State de facto in northern Syria, and it's backed 100% by the West. So that's what Syria is about, and Lebanon is very divided on that issue. A lot of the Lebanese that are, let's say, friendly about Israel want to see the regime in Damascus, the Assad regime, overthrown. So the U.S. and Israel know how to press these buttons and how to direct all the bad blood. And if you look at WikiLeaks, for instance, the whole Syrian debacle was really an Israeli. This was an Israeli effort. In terms of U.S. and Western policy, this came right out of Israel. Okay, and we can go all the way back to the Clean Break document, the Project for the New American Century. I can go even further back. But as far as Israel goes, having a weak and divided Syria has always been a top priority for Israel, and then they work through the United States to make that happen. Okay.
Well, when you say that, it's very important to address Turkey at the same time because it's all linked. And I think the posture of Turkey has allowed this to happen. It doesn't matter how much,
And Jordan.
yeah, and Jordan as well. But because of the locality with, of course, the Kurds and, how the Turkish vendors handle this crisis in the northern part of Syria was really, really a major, as far as I'm concerned, turning point, if you will. If Turkey would have been far firmer and put aside their differences with Al-Assad at the time and say, okay, that can be solved. This is not a both nations, coming into confrontations. This is sectorial. This is an issue that can be solved. But the oil was put on the flame, water was put on the flame, if you will, and this become so big that it becomes the only topic of discussion instead of trying to say, okay, let's keep it a fringe discussions, a fringe problem that needs to be solved, but let's agree that there is a major problem in Syria and it's endangering not only Turkey, but it's endangering the entire region because everybody has commercial relationship, whether it's with Armenia, whether it's Azerbaijan, everyone has built this relationship, whether it is with Israel, whether it's with Turkey, whether it's with Syria, Lebanon. So this is not just from an economic point of view. This is not something that is just affecting Syria or that is affecting Lebanon. It's really affecting everyone. And simply because some major players, or those that pretend to be major players like Turkey, have just remained quiet so they can coin a few bucks and buy sometimes. But politically speaking, I think Turkey is in turmoil and it might actually explode before Jordan, because I'm amazed Jordan hasn't exploded yet. It's a mystery to me how Jordan has not yet really come together and make an ultimatum to King Abdullah and tell him, whether we're going to do something about it.
Let me tell
we're
you,
not going to do anything about it, but we're not going to help Israel, carry on the genocide.
Here's the plan for Jordan, okay? And this may become public, it may become more well known, but Jordan is basically a British and American colony of sorts, okay? And like Egypt, it has been compelled to have a peace agreement with Israel, and the majority of Jordanian population are Palestinian. Okay, is a fact. So Israel is in the process of ethnically cleansing, and this is going to bring us to my news story, Hesher, which they're in the process of ethnically cleansing and killing the Palestinian population in Gaza. And this is a great ambition of Israel, long-term desire to ethnically cleanse and kill and eliminate what they call the final solution. No irony there. In Gaza. Okay. Now, once Gaza is done, and according to Ben Gvir and all these fanatics in Tel Aviv, it's halfway done, they say. We're halfway done with Gaza. We need that final push. Final push. Then the West Bank. And the plan for Jordan is to move to force the Palestinian population into from the West Bank into Jordan. Yes, that's what it is. And the problem here is the current royal family, the Hashemite king, what a lot of people have been calling the English king of Jordan. Okay, that's his nickname to a lot of Palestinians and people in the region. That royal family will not survive. When that tumultuous movement of the people begins under duress by Israel and its allies, the royal family in Jordan will not be able to survive. So what do they need to do? What does Washington and London need to do and Tel Aviv need to do? They will need to look at regime change in Jordan, okay? And if you look at other regime changes, how this has been engineered, the most recent regime change that was engineered out of Washington was in Egypt during the so-called Arab Spring. And it was a two-step. It was a double hop. Mubarak out, and they had elections, and the Muslim Brotherhood, Mohammed Morsi candidate, came in, but only stayed in for 12 months. There was a counter coup after 1 year, and he was pushed out into prison and then replaced by a military dictator. And everything is cushy and hunky-dory with al-Sisi. Okay, but they're very cleverly, the U.S. and its allies, with the help of certain local partners, and definitely Israel was, I think, involved in that, made it look like there was a color revolution, and then even sent politicians over to make it look real, demanding the release of Morsi after the counter coup. But in reality, this was all done basically to plan. And because the Emiratis and the Saudis did not want a Muslim Brotherhood government in Egypt.
That's it.
A non-starter, right? It's a non-starter. So they paid for all of the and ran all of the information ops, the banners, all the English language stuff for our Western media to get rid of Morsi. Okay, so that was this double two-phase regime change. That's probably what's going to work in Syria, in Jordan.
In Jordan, yeah.
In Jordan. So the royal family would be removed somehow, or resign, or abdicate, or whatever constitutionally. They would bring in somebody temporarily. That wouldn't be that would then go up in smoke, and then the Americans or the British would parachute in some kind of a politician or somebody, like they tried to do with Libya. They had this government in exile. Iraq, government in exile. The Syrian National Council, or whatever it was called. Do you remember that? They had the Syrian government in what was it, Paris? And they toured around raising money and stuff like that. Friends of Syria. They're probably going to try the same thing. Their plan is to do that in Jordan, because they're going to have to transform Jordanian politics and society in order to do the massive ethnic cleansing of Palestinians from the West Bank. That's the plan.
That's the plan. Doesn't mean it's going to work. Because the demographic there are not in their favors. I mean, the day that Abdullah is gone, I can tell you a lot of Palestinians are going to want to cross the border. And if you're going to bring a puppet from the UK or whatever, anyone with a bit of a British accent or American accent is going to be taken out very quickly. The Palestinians are, as I said, this is such a bulk of the population of Jordan. And I've been to Jordan myself in Oman. During some very tense moments with Iraq, and I can tell you, I understand how things works there, and it's very tight, it's very controlled, it's massive intelligence apparatus in Jordan, which is the only reason why it's kept.
Well, that's probably together. In terms of who would replace, if the royal family stepped down for whatever reason, they would be replaced probably with a technocrat, a bureaucrat, a general, the head of security, or I don't know, it'd be some
security
kind of
guy,
some kind of a strong kind of, but that's only a placeholder. They would need to put in a, westernized bureaucrat from America.
The technocrat.
There's plenty of Jordanian expats in the US, in the UK, in Europe. They're everywhere. And so that would be the sort of second thing. So, or it could go the other way. I'm not sure. I mean, to have a military dictatorship in Jordan would probably work quite fine, like it has in Egypt. But I think it's a different kind of society and political dynamic there in terms of what people would accept as legitimate coming from a monarchy. That's a big transition for Jordan. But this is what Israel is going to require. They're going to require that operation to happen. We are dealing with a genocidal, racist, colonial settler project here that is quite open. At least their far right wing is. They're quite open about what they want to do. They want to get rid of the Palestinian population out of the way.
To be honest with you, Patrick, the reality of war is what dictates what's going to happen. That's my view, and that's what history tells you. You might have all the plans all figured out, but at the end of the day, if tomorrow Iran was to hit not just military bases, but starting to create a large numbers of casualties in Tel Aviv, I'm not saying they have to, it's not what I'm promoting, but what I'm saying is the reality of war is war. And clearly, I think we can say, perhaps not openly, but in the diplomatic circle, it is quite clear that Iran and Israel are at war one way or the other. When you start to fire 100 an 80 ballistic missile on a country, you can say you're at war with that country. I think it's fair to say.
I think it's safe to say, yes.
So the reality, Patrick and Asher, is really, for me, is that depending on what Israel is cooking up at the moment as a significant response, as they're saying to the world, depending on that, if they attack strategic assets, which mean nuclear assets, perhaps more likely harbor and terminals, and something that's going to impact the economy, not only the Iranian economy, by the way, but the entire world economy, because Iran response will certainly be in the same line. It's going to paralyze a lot of terminal and oil terminal, and that's not going to be just in Israel. That's going to be across really the region, because if Iran see it as an existential threat from an economic point of view, which means that their resources cannot be exported, well, they're not going to let the other guys getting rich at their expense, right? So that's really one thing. The second part of it is that we've seen probably the only reason why Iran has not yet targeted at least civilian targets in Israel is because of Russia. Russians have told them it's a long game, and this is how you make them tired. You're going towards an election in the United States. Everything could change very quickly. You don't know what's going to happen. So because you don't have political clarity in US, it's not in your best interest to engage into something heavy, which is the reason why I believe Iran will not do anything drastic until the election. They're going to want to know what they're dealing with, what's going to be Trump. If Trump is elected, what's going to be Trump's reaction? Is he going to go over the board with Israel? Is he going to try to temper his relationship, or is he going to use the attempt assassination on himself, claim to be, which is another claim of being an Iranian-led.
No, this has been debunked. This is an FBI op. Have you seen this?
This is an FBI op. We all know that. Everybody is looking to it.
It's kind of come out already. Like, this was a complete. I knew it was bogus, and said so on X from the beginning. I don't even need to research it. You just the MO, Hesher. Like,
yeah.
One day before the guy says, you make a book out of that. You got to make a movie out of that. Classic. I mean, this is Hollywood, right?
No, it's amazing.
Unbelievable.
And there's Patrick, you touched on this earlier, but there's a false dialectic that's being set up in the American mass media, where and we've been pointing this out for a while, but it seems to be amplifying right now, which is amazing to me, because they're actually using the utter destruction of Hurricane Helene in the South, and in North Carolina, and all the states that were affected by that, as a pivot point for politicians to come on Fox and say, oh, how's it going with the hurricane relief? Oh, it's going great. We're really busy. But have you seen what's going on in Israel? In fact, let me play you this clip of Lindsey Graham. This is absolutely amazing. This clown, this complete idiot. This is a senator from South Carolina, and we don't even know how many people have been lost. I mean, entire towns are gone. The stench of rotting bodies everywhere, bodies in trees. I mean, there is some crazy stuff going on here in the United States. And look what Lindsey Graham took the opportunity to say here when being asked about it on Fox.
You can thank Donald Trump and Elon Musk for that.
I've been going all over South Carolina, like most people. I hadn't slept much. Well, look what's going on in Israel. Our friends in Israel are surrounded by people that want to kill them, destroy them, a second Holocaust in the making, and Biden is deproportional. What is the proportional response to people who want to kill you and your family? They're running out of ammunition in Israel. We have to help our friends over there from coming here. They're willing to.
You can thank Donald Trump.
Have you checked if he has a U.S. passport, this guy? I mean, clearly, I'm wondering if he's American. I would check him, honestly.
We need to fight him over there so they don't come over here. The Muslims.
Right. Fight the war abroad before it comes out.
Israel.
Yeah. And they'll give a check. They'll give a check to the poor guys in South Carolina, probably a couple of $100, telling them, sorry, our billions are stopping in Ukraine. Right? Yeah, I think it's something like that. Yeah. The rest is in Ukraine. It's safe. It's in it's in the deposit account.
A little.
We know where it is.
Right.
Right. Not even a COVID check, about half of a COVID check, and only $50 more than the people of Lahaina got, and then so then you've got, let's look at this one also. We also had representative from Florida, Corey Mills, out and about, and to his credit, he was on helicopters delivering water and all that good stuff. But again, look at this sharp pivot in topics here.
Is Biden restraining our ally, Israel,
we got a mute
from
going on
retaliating
here.
against our mortal enemy, Iran? He says, don't attack Iran's nuclear facilities. Why is he defending Iran?
You know what? That's a great question, Varney. And here's the thing. Not only has he defended Iran, but he's released billions of dollars in unfrozen assets. He's not imposed the necessary sanctions to stop oil exploitation that is actually funding the terrorist attacks that were going on by Hamas, by the Houthis, by Hezbollah. It has been Israel and their right for defense and support of their own citizens that has actually had to take the fight to these terrorist organizations that are all Iranian regime-backed organizations. We need to take a stronger approach and understand that Iran is actually the problem. We need to support Israel's rights to its defense. But the other question is that the United Nations was so quick to tell Israel to do a ceasefire during the holy month of Ramadan, but where are they on calling Iran and others to do a ceasefire during Rosh Hashanah, which is the holy time for Israel and for Jews? And so you see the hypocrisy, but the bottom line is that we need to stand firm with our allies, and we need to understand that the Iranian regime and even the Iranian people, for the most part, want to see a cessation of this type of terrorist activity that Iran promotes.
Congressman,
there you go.
So I'll just point out something. All the U.S. news footage of Iran's missile attack, they don't show anything landing. They'll just show like the starburst in the sky. They don't show the footage that we post, which is Israel getting pounded with direct hits and the Nevatim airfield and all that getting hit. They don't show that in the U.S. So people believe that Iran didn't hit their targets when these missile salvos were launched a couple of days ago. They really think that they'll go with the Washington explanation. It was ineffectual. We intercepted 90%, and the other ones landed in the desert. So, job done. Great. And that was it. The press didn't push. They didn't prod. They just walked away and said, thank you for that official report. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Job done as your, mainstream journalist. And the reality is something different. Had they shown those images and on a heavy loop, like they normally do with other stuff, it would transform the opinion of Americans, because America, and you might disagree or agree with me, Hesher, but Americans do recognize strength, and they do recognize military strength and prowess. And when they see it, they will then make a calculation that, we're not dealing with guys on camels, throwing spears here, like the stereotypes are, like the Americans like to portray people in the Middle East as primitive terrorists. Iran is not a primitive terrorist country. It's an advanced first world in terms of engineering and military tech, and in terms of mobilizing society, they have it. But Americans don't see them that way, because it's constantly getting this. They're the number one sponsor of terror in the world, and whatever. Those tropes, those talking points. So the propaganda is just absolutely amazing.
What they're missing, what the message that is not circulating in America, is that Iran has been preparing for a U.S. attack, since the Iraqi war,
That's right,
for a very, very long time. So this is not something they've planned a couple of years ago. We're talking about a long term planning, huge amount of underground base, extremely deep in the mountains. And it's a large country, they're spreading pretty large, so they can attack from different places, different technology that we're not even aware of. I've been told that they've just kept, under the rug, because they don't want to create casualty because of the fatwa and because of the, this kind of ideology that killing civilian is not doesn't buy you a good ticket to paradise. I think it's quite clear that these doctrines might come to change depending on the response of Israel. But one thing that people can be sure of 100% is that Iran is not a force, to be messing with, because if you see with 180 so-called ballistic missiles and a few supersonic missiles as well, this is not the Iron Dome that's going to stop that, because this is not the aim of the Iron Dome. The Iron Dome is more for rockets, short-range rockets coming out of Hamas, out of the Gaza Strip. That's what the Iron Dome is. It's not going to stop supersonic, not even, ballistic missiles. It's just that the speed is just simply not manageable by the Iron Dome. So the THAAD systems, which is really what they have out there, and this is all operated by the United States, whether it's on board of destroyers or whether on land in the Nevadian desert, doesn't matter. This is really American technology that is defending Israel. But as I say, Israel cannot win any war on their own. And as I said, any response that will attack Jerusalem or even, especially Tel Aviv, and create a large amount of casualties amongst the populations will be the end of Israel, because they will not turn against Iran specifically. They'll turn around Israel itself and its government and say, look what you've done. You've not actually worked towards peace or trying to stabilizing the issues. You've increasing it, and each time, at each opportunity you had to grab the ceasefires, the negotiation for the hostages, you went on, stubborn and keep on, slaughtering more Palestinians and now Lebanese people. So this is going to go against Israel, and there's going to be a moment where the United States is going to have to really realize what they're getting themselves into, because it's going to change the demographic of the region. That's what I believe.
I want to put this story up here. You guys, I want to get your comment on it. Before I do that, though, I want to get a quick comment from Freddie and Hesher. Both of you. First, Hesher. Hesher, what do you think? Israel says they're planning a major response against Iran. They're probably going to do it at midnight on October 7th for the symbolic value of that. Militarily speaking, strategically, tactically, what would you just take a guess? Don't worry, we're not going to hold anybody to this, and there's no cash bets on the line here. What do you think Israel's response would be? Hesher first, and then Freddie.
Well, I'm guessing there's going to be another attack in southern Lebanon, and I'm wondering if there's going to be an escalation in Gaza, perhaps, maybe a dual front, or even worse yet, maybe a triple front. Is there going to be direct attack on Iranian locations? And that would be one that, any other day of this year, I might have said, I don't think so. But seeing as tomorrow is October 7, I'm not going to be surprised if I wake up and see that there were, a dozen bunker busters dropped somewhere in Iran, as well as a ground incursion in southern Lebanon, and more death and destruction in Gaza. I mean, that's kind of what I think the worst case scenario would be, and something I'm expecting a worst case scenario, or at least I'm not expecting a worst case scenario, especially considering, the specter of October 7. They've gone out of their way to make it their 9/11. So if it's their 9/11, then approximately a year from the event, we're going to start seeing some major attacks happening. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. What about you, Freddie?
Well, the way I look at it is Israel cannot afford to have a response that will target civilians in Iran. They just cannot afford that, because they know Iran has definitely the capabilities and the military capabilities to retaliate and to really, really do some serious damage in Israel. Absolutely, this is no doubt about it, and it's not the fact, because we're talking about, let's say, 180 missiles. Can you imagine? You get thousands of missiles coming every day, and we know the Iranians have at least minimum 150,000 ballistic missiles and supersonic missiles available to them. And this is all hidden in, as I say, in bunkers and in mountains, and it's not going to be destroyed by any attack that will be launched against Iran. So my response to you is that this is going to be a strategic target that we should be expecting, and not necessarily in Iran. I think Syria is definitely whatever assets the Iranians have in Syria at the moment. They're definitely going to try to do a big bang there. Maybe you see also an attack on a consulate embassy, Iranian embassy somewhere in the world. It doesn't have not necessarily been, as I said, even in the region. This has to be something that is symbolic and that is related to October the 7th. But in no way, and especially knowing that the Russians have been equipped, the Iranian with S-400s, so there's a lot of air defense capabilities now, and definitely some of the Russian engineers will be there to operate them, and then probably some air force as well present. So there is a deterrence capabilities in Iran, which would make it ridiculous and embarrassing for Israel to miss its target or to not achieve the strategic objective. So it has to be something symbolic. Look at, as I say, an embassy or some complex in Syria, something that's going to really hurt the Iranian to the core, but not an attack on civilians. I would be very surprised.
Yeah, I think what they need. Think the way I look at this is, what would the headlines look like afterwards, especially in the West, the global headlines. What would be the most value for Israel? They, like Freddie said, civilian casualties in Iran, that's not going to be a good look for Israel or the United States. So that's kind of like cross that out. Nuclear sites, that would be, that's Iran's going to come back and it's going to they could literally pound Israel pretty hardcore. I mean, Israel's very exposed. Israel only has two oil refineries, 3 gas platforms. All of its fresh water is from 5 desalination plants and a couple of other power stations that they use to produce power. That's the self-sufficiency of Israel. You're talking about 10, 12 targets that Iran has the missile firepower to basically flatten, and that's Israel done. Let's kind of be clear. That can happen in 15 minutes. So Israel's going to want to avoid that. They want to get the headlines. They want to keep the show going. I don't think they have a very good plan. Much like Ukraine, they don't have an exit strategy or any kind of long-term plan other than keep the war going. Okay, so I think the shock and awe for the headlines will be the next day, Israel hits targets in Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Yemen, and hits Hamas in Gaza, whatever. And so it'll be like 5. So they're going to like channel the 6-day war theme, maybe 1967. It's us against all the Arabs kind of thing. Because Netanyahu's going to need something to motivate his troops, because I think morale is very low right now in their sort of South Lebanon adventure. So I think that would be, and the United States doesn't want to get directly involved in hitting Iran. I think they'll hit some target in Iran as well. But it'll be limited. It'll be symbolic, and it'll be military. And the U.S. won't be involved in that. The U.S. will get involved in everything else. And I think there would also be, I don't know if you guys agree, but there would be probably this idea that they could somehow goad Iran into some kind of a response that they could neutralize, or that would put Iran in a vulnerable or a sort of compromising position. So, but I think it's going to be that kind of broad spectrum shock and awe, big headlines, 5 different countries. I can see them getting excited in Washington about that, you guys.
Yeah.
Or it could be the opposite, something completely surgical, like taking out the supreme leader of Iran or something like that, trying to, an assassination at a super high level, and going after. Not easy, but as I say, this will be extremely symbolic in terms of attacking the acts of resistance directly at the head, and going directly after a supreme leader or the new president of Iran, something like that. I wouldn't be surprised.
Maybe the new president, but the supreme, if they were successful or tried to assassinate the supreme leader, whatever, if they were unsuccessful, that would be the biggest motivator, rally cry for Iran and all of its allies. If they were successful, you know, Iran will unleash pretty much everything that they possibly have, and they'll hit U.S. targets. So maybe that's bait them to a irrational reaction, because Iran is a very rational actor internationally, and the way that they conduct their reciprocal strikes, much like the Russians, they're depressingly stoic in terms of the moves they make. So to get them out of that mode, you'd have to do something extreme. Would Israel and the U.S. try something like that? I would say it's possible. So,
look, the ultimate goal for Israel is to achieve and to maintain and to keep the U.S. support. That's the ultimate goal. Anything they do has a component that links back to U.S. support. So anything they're going to do, they're going to want to make sure that U.S. support it, or if not supporting it, is going to defend it in some way or another. So this has to really about provocation. This is about provocating enough Iran, like it has happened in Ukraine and Russia. It's not happen in a day. It's a process where you poke the bear, as people used to say, and then eventually the bear is going to come and show you his, how he deals with you. And it's the same situation here. They're going to keep on poking Iran until Iran really comes out with something which they can fit themselves upon, just generate huge amount of money out of the US taxpayers, European taxpayers, and getting a lot of resources towards engaging in a much more sustained war effort against Iran itself. But for that, as I say, they cannot do that without Iran responding in a way that would justify any of that. So it's a bit of a conundrum, and I think the Iranians are a different species. They're just different. They don't think like we do. They don't think like Westerners do. And then more importantly, they've known how to be patient. They know how to be patient. And if you look at Nasrallah, everything that he's done over his career as a Secretary General, as a politician, as a resistant man, that's what he is. He's the Che Guevara, as they say, of West Asia. This is someone that has really lived his life, resisting the oppression and fighting the oppression. And these are people that take their time. And you've never heard anything out of bounds with Nasrallah. It's always been kind of let's let them come. Let them come. He's never been, let's go out there and try to do something crazy, although he has the means with the Hezbollah to do so. But there are different people. They're patient. And they will wait for their time, for the right time. And this is unfortunately time Israel doesn't have, because it's coming to an end, one way or the other.
Yep. Well, look, I want to cover this story, Hesher, if we can, before we wrap it up. But if you bring on that suppressed news tweet, if you can put that on screen, that would be amazing. If you're able to.
Yeah, is that one of the ones you sent me earlier?
Yeah, I sent you a series of them. So it says suppressed news at the top. If you can put that, I think it was two slides. One is text.
Yeah, I got those. Hold on, here we go.
First one is that one. Yeah. So check this out, you guys. Very important. This is a good account on X. There's a lot of substance in his posts. Okay, and he's dealing with contacts on the ground a lot. Okay, just so you know. This is what he's saying. Did you know what happened yesterday in northern Gaza was all part of a plan? Let everybody know before it's too late. The plan is called the Island Plan, and the Israeli army was considering adopting it, or at least parts of it, based on what happened yesterday night. It seems that they adopted it and are implementing it. In recent days, there are those in the army who have already expressed their support for this step. We're talking about massive ethnic cleansing and a continuation of the genocide. At the beginning of September, a major general and former head of the operations directorate presented a revolutionary plan he believes will lead to the defeat of Hamas. This is coming from the Hebrew media, okay? And if you bring up the second, thank you, Hesher. According to the plan proposed by this general, the Israeli army would evacuate, quote, evacuate, their language, uh, ethnically cleanse more than 200,000 residents from the northern Gaza area, most of which is pulverized. Okay, but there's still a couple 100,000 people there holding out, and turn the entire northern Gaza area into a security zone under full military Israeli control, with the aim of pressuring Hamas to concede and accept Israel's terms, according to this report in this channel here. So in order to implement this, Israel would have to commit, this is suppressed news talking, large-scale massacres against the residents to force them to flee. This plan is considered extremely bloody, criminal, and terroristic. That's to say the least. Okay, this is serious pogrom, ethnic cleansing, mass slaughter and murder, a continuation of the genocide, but be a very, very vicious phase of this story. And the idea is to turn northern Gaza into a security zone administered by the Israeli military, no Palestinians left, and then start to work on bombing and cleansing the southern part of Gaza, pushing them by force, whoever is still alive, pushing them into Egypt. Okay, so look at this. This is a really important story. I've retweeted this on my X feed. You guys go look at it. Follow Suppressed News. He's doing good work, and look at this story. So we have the possibility here, like with the leak of the Hannibal Directive and the Dahi Doctrine, when these stories came out, you could see the or the Greater Israel Project. You could see that there's a plan behind some of the things that we're looking at, and there's lots of plans laying around, best laid plans of mice and men. Some of them are going to work and come to fruition, others aren't. And this one does seem very plausible. So again, I take the Israeli press here with a pinch of salt. He provides links below the post, so you can go, and I use Google Translate. I looked at it myself. So, be it as it may, is that what we're looking at here? If so, that should be a great concern to everybody. But I'll leave that there.
Yeah. I understand what was been said here, although I feel this was always the plan. I mean, the Netzarim Road, having a demilitarized zone and complete control of northern Gaza was pretty much part of the overall strategy from a military point of view, but it did not succeed, which means that obviously this plan is promising to take it to the next level up, which is really a full genocide of that part of the Gaza Strip. To rid it completely of Palestinian, and whoever is left there will not remain alive, will not be allowed to stay alive. Evacuating is a term that I'm not comfortable with Israeli when they say we're going to evacuate the area. It can mean a lot of things. Yeah. So I mean, let's see. Yeah, it's Suppressed News is a good account. I follow it actually. I would say that sometimes you will want to see probably more quality than quantity. There's a lot of quantity, but I think it's a personal remark, but I'd rather prefer quality than quantity. But it's a good account for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So make sure and follow that one. Again, that is, let me bring that up one more time so people can see it. That's at Suppressed News. If you're looking for the actual handle, it's news is spelled NWS, but just search Suppressed News. You can find it, or go to 21 Wire, go to 21st Century Wire's X handle. It's been retweeted over there. Freddie, what do you think about, we're talking about what could happen tomorrow. Do you think there also could be any risk for people in European countries, here in America, for any sort of, perhaps, I don't know, something that may have the appearance of a terror cell doing something in Western countries to perhaps bolster the approval of Western citizens for this sort of ongoing behavior? Do you think there's any issue like that? Any sort of October 7 style events that could happen in America or elsewhere?
I don't see it personally. I think just really the entire effort is media based. It's really about reminding people how and why Israel has been such a criminal and rogue state then because it's justified by the October the 7th. That's the story, and they're going to stick to their guns. And you can already see today, I was watching some French media, which I rarely do, but I can tell you it was all about October the 7th. And of course, Israel has the right to defend itself. And of course, they should go after Hezbollah in Lebanon. And of course, they should go after Iran. So the same rhetoric, and we're going to be bombarded with that for a few days. But as I said, France has a very eclectic population, and people are pretty awakened here in France. So these kind of rhetoric doesn't fly much, doesn't get any traction, and I think that Macron knows that very well. But you're going to have the usual suspect, the BFM TV and all that gap, doing the Israeli propaganda as usual, just giving us the a good reminder, a strong stick, just to tell us that's what you need to believe in, because that's what happened. Do not do your homework. Do not try to find out by yourself. This is the truth, and that's the reason why we need to support Israel. And that's what we're going to get, because that's all they can do. That's all they got left, is trying to maintain the appearance that what is done is justifiable, when clearly, by international law, by international humanitarian standard law, it's absolutely appalling what is allowed to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Patrick, welcome back. I know you had a bit of a power blip there, but let me throw this out there real quick, because I brought it up earlier and I didn't have the data in front of me, and then Basil and some of our listeners started dropping me what I needed here with regard to the BB Files. This documentary is called The BB Files. There's an article at NPR. There's an article at The Guardian. But out of NPR, they talk about it. And what happened there was an Israeli court rejected a request from Prime Minister Netanyahu to block this documentary. And the topic is about his legal troubles. So he's on trial for allegedly granting favors to media moguls in exchange for gifts and favorable media coverage. Who would have thunk it? He denies wrongdoing and has called the trial. This is an older article, but the film casts a spotlight on him as he faces this international pressure over his responsibility for the security failures leading up to October 7. It was being screened in Canada, and he filed a lawsuit against the state of Israel and the leading investigative journalist Raviv Drucker. And Netanyahu argued that the film, produced by Oscar-winning director Alex Gibney, violates Israeli law by screening unpublished footage from his police interrogations. So the suit is also against Israeli journalist Drucker, who's one of the producers of the film. And Netanyahu's attorney claimed that Drucker's publicly identified himself as a political opponent of the prime minister and expressed a desire for the end of his tenure. So that's out of NPR discussing it. And then there's an article that came out just a few days ago at The Guardian, and the headline is, "I've never seen the depth of moral corruption. Controversial Netanyahu doc screens at Toronto." So that's that one, the BB Files, and I just wanted to throw that out there because I didn't have that data in front of me earlier.
Yeah, Benjamin Milikowski. He's Polish. Polish, went to high school, grew up in America, in Philadelphia, and his family's from Poland. No connection at all to the Middle East, by the way, like so many others. But he's Polish. Mile from Argentina. That's a short version of Netanyahu's real name, which is Milikowski. He's another strange character down in Argentina. Anyway, the big scandal, and it may never come to light. There's a huge amount of grift going on between U.S. aid money and arms, military aid between Israel and the U.S., and they're creaming off probably a significant amount, and not so dissimilar from how it's done in Ukraine, where the money comes in and they have to, purchase U.S. equipment. There might be a double set of books, either on the Israeli side or the U.S. side, overvaluing military hardware, everything you can imagine, bullets, and people pocketing the surplus cash on the Israeli side, probably maybe something on the U.S. side with certain people doing the paperwork. I'm just saying, because that's kind of what they've been doing in Ukraine. In Ukraine, they've been selling stuff out the back of the truck as well for cash. That's another scam. And those arms are ending up, even in Gaza in some cases, which is interesting. But whether that's going to actually get exposed or come to light is another question. So we don't know for sure if that's ever going to get exposed. But that's why they keep needing new tranches of money. I mean, how much money, how many billions of dollars do you need? The money Israel's gotten is way above their annual stipend of $4 billion. It's way they've gotten more in the last 12 months than they have in the previous 15.
Yeah, and when we're talking about the cash, like just to maintain the organizations, the institutions in Israel and some kind of, the social welfare probably, but the big amount of money is the money that comes straight out of the military industrial complex in the United States. I mean, if you look at the bill, it's 2022. I've got the numbers here. It's $27 billion. $27 billion worth of equipment. That gets you a nice little war. I mean, you can slaughter a lot of civilians with that. And this is taking into consideration that Joe Biden later on kind of like hold on a little bit, on the brakes and say, maybe just 2,000 tons bombs, we might keep it, because it just looked bad, and it's too many people dying in one go, so let's kill them slowly. It's a lot of money for a small state. I mean, look at the superficie of Israel and our demography there. I mean, what can justify such amount of money? This is an assimilated state of the United States. This cannot just be someone that has no defense agreement with the United States. This is not possible. This is something else. And it's called corruption. That's what it calls, because people getting rich in Washington, D.C., like there is no tomorrow. Nobody wants that war to stop. South Carolina is entertainment for these guys. They don't care. The real money is with those that are in different military committees and so on. And that basically come and keep on going back in between the government and Boeing and Lockheed Martin and Raytheon. And these are the one that coin it.
And in the media as well, they're on the boards of the major media conglomerates on the defense. So it's like and then into government as well. And Mark Esper and all these same type of people. They do Wesley Clark is another serial board member. This guy is always talk about a grift. He's always ready for a board position. That guy. What's that? 3-4 meetings a year? Yeah. And then half a million or whatever, $1 million in the pocket just to be on the board. It's a great gig if you can get it. But I retweeted that Suppressed News put up another thread, which I hope you guys can take a look at, share, everybody. That's on our X Twitter feed at 21Wire. And I'm incredible. So flash his tweet up on screen again if you can, Hesher. Yeah, Suppressed News on X. That's at Suppressed NWS. So it's some very good content there. So hopefully if you guys have a chance, you go on the X, formerly known as Twitter, follow his account.
He's a good account. He's a good account. I don't want to give a bad impression that they're a bad account, because they're certainly not a bad account. They're doing a great job. But it's a personal thing. I don't like volume. I like quality and investigation. It's a purely personal choice. But I follow them and I read their tweets, and I found a lot of very interesting stuff. So I mean, if you're interested and you're a journalist interested in that particular part of the world, and this is definitely a great account to follow. The work they do is impressive.
Yeah, and add a little bit of analysis, a little more detail. Where a lot of the trend on Twitter with their big accounts is to copy and paste each other, put a JPEG of an image, some kind of a shock headline with no source, no link to the story, and this is what a lot of those massive accounts are doing. I don't want to name any names, but I've called a couple of them out. in the last couple of days, because. But what you're doing, Freddie, is great. You know, you put the analysis in there. You've got the depth in your tweets. So other journalists are, real journalists are reading Freddie's tweets because it's worth their time. And
you get the source. You get at least the source. So you're not venturing in wonderland or conspiracy land. You have the source you read. And as I said, there are great independent journalists all across Europe, all across the Middle East. You know, don't forget the Middle East has great investigative journalists, great journalism in Lebanon, even in the UAE. You'd be surprised to find some of them are excellent, and they're not lined up with the UAE policies. So as I said, what's important is to be able to separate the wheat from the chaff, and being able to discern what's actually fitting the big pictures to allow you to better understand where this is going and why and under which name these crimes are being committed. But it's available. It's really available. We're not super genius. We're just putting the dots together, and suddenly we're starting to see that what is going to happen in the likelihood of in the near future. So Suppress News is doing a great job at that because they have the pulse and can clearly see they're getting the information from the ground, and that's the part that I like in it. Information on the ground is better than anything else.
So who do we follow? Who does Freddie follow? Who do I follow? When it comes to what's happening right now, this tense situation, this is who I'm immediately going to X for. I'm going to Elijah Magner on Twitter. I'm going to Leila Haitoum. These are both people that we have interviewed. Hala Jabber, Saeed Mohammed Morandi, okay, who's absolutely just slaughtering the mainstream media at the moment. Incredible. And also Scott Ritter is very, very strong on what's going on right now. He's not going to print or say anything that he doesn't know is absolutely 100% true. And so those are just maybe the top, and Freddie, of course. Those are like the top sort of 6 maybe accounts that I will go to take a look, see if I want to make sure I've got a kind of clear take on what's happening. The Cradle is another one. That's Sharmeen Narwani, who's in Beirut. She's fantastic.
Max at the Grey Zone is doing a great job as well with Mate as well. So I mean,
Max Blumenthal, Aaron Mate.
Max Blumenthal, Aaron Mate is fantastic job.
Kit Clarenberg, also Grey Zone. So there's a lot of good independent sources on X. Some other accounts are very unreliable, have been putting out fake news. These are big accounts, 500,000 followers, millions of followers, who are on our side, supposedly, have been consistently putting out fake stories and completely uncorroborated, sensationalized headlines. And the algorithm that Elon Musk has set up favors those accounts. So Elon Musk's algorithm incentivizes fake news on X. And I've called out 1 or 2 of these already. I'm going to probably keep calling them out. I'm on a bit of a crusade, you guys, and Hesher knows we've been on the fake news crusade against the mainstream media. We were one of the first to really kind of, and the reason I went all out on that in 2016 during the whole 2016 election thing is because I was getting personally targeted by the establishment's NGOs and think tanks at the time that were looking for pro-Trump or people challenging the narrative on Syria, and they were demonizing us in the mainstream press, okay, in The Guardian, in all these Huffington. I was getting approached by NBC to try to entrap me into interviews. They were just basically hunting down independent journalists and trying to destroy them. And because of that, I started getting more militant in a way about calling out fake news, whether it was mainstream or even in the so-called independent media. And I don't care if we're on the, personally, I don't care if I'm on the same side of this issue. We're not on the same team, because if we're on the same team, you wouldn't be putting out fake news during a war environment. It's a very tense situation. You got to be careful when you have hundreds of thousands or millions of followers. If you're putting out unfactual and sensational, fabricated breaking news, And all these big accounts are doing it. And they're making a huge amount of money on X from monetization, because what I discovered doing, and I'll share some of my findings on a very good thread, which will be more of a teach-in on how to spot some of this stuff. People are putting truthful posts and opinion. Maybe one count had about a 5-to-1 ratio, where they'll put out 5 true stories and 1 fake story. The fake story outperforms all of the others combined. So in terms of the business model on X that Elon Musk has created, inadvertently or not, who knows, but it incentivizes this kind of business model, and they intentionally leave out the source link. Why do they do that? Because if you put the source hyperlink of any breaking news story, what you put in your tweet's going to have to match the content and the headline of what is in the link. Okay. What they're doing is changing headlines, twisting it, skewing it to get it more emotional, to get it more sexy, and it immediately goes viral. And they don't want people going off X. And Elon's probably penalizing tweets that have external links. There was a big debate about this. Remember with Substack, he wanted to shut down Instagram. So Elon's got a problem with external links going off his platform, okay? But what he's done is incentivized the rapid spread, a tsunami of fake news. He has built it into the business model of big accounts, quote, influencers, monetizing, and they've all understood this algorithm, and they're playing it. They're playing off it. And there's more fake news. The majority of fake news on the internet is, believe it or not, is produced on X, and it's produced by a handful of accounts. Producing the majority on the entire internet news information space is being done by a handful of accounts on X. That's how powerful this system is, but also how corrupt the practice has become. And they're making thousands of dollars a month basically doing fraudulent news and calling it breaking news. When you see breaking news at the top of these tweets with no source link, or they just mention Reuters or Israeli Hebrew media or something, total bullshit.
And the question, Patrick, is who are the people? Who are these people behind these accounts? You know, we can name it. I have no problem naming them. Megatron, Adam, all these guys. Who are they? Who are these people? What's their journalistic background? How many times they've been in the Middle East? Who are they?
No, some of them are being run by the same people. So they've got farms. It makes sense, doesn't it? You want to have a farm, right?
Yeah.
If you've got a formula that works and you're making X bucks, you want to replicate that, right, as much as possible. And so these some of these very entrepreneurial types are running a whole stable of accounts, and that's why you'll see the posts are more or less the same on all these accounts. And then they're also copying and pasting off other veteran accounts, stealing their content. But the majority of it comes from Telegram. They copy and paste from Telegram. So somebody at some point is either A, doing the real work, and then they're copying it, pasting, and changing it to make it go viral. And in some cases, putting out absolutely fraudulent news stories. I'm talking about the biggest accounts with 4 million followers. Okay. That's what I'm talking about here. And people don't want to call it out because they're afraid of, being kind of hurting the movement or something like this. I'm telling you, people in the Middle East aren't pushing this garbage out. It's people living in America, in Australia, in Canada, and people outside of the US who support the, cause, support the Palestinian cause or whatever, generally pro-Russian. Those are the ones pushing the majority of the stuff. A lot of it's coming from the West. People in the region don't want World War III. I'm sorry, they don't, because they already know the price of war. They've had enough. But the sad part of this story is the people in Europe, they haven't had to face war. People in the US and North America haven't had to face anything of any significance on their home turf. And even though they might be part of the opposition or the resistance or the dissidents, a lot of them are pushing for a third world war. They don't care, but they're very willing to profit off this suffering and this situation and while at the same time saying it's okay because I support the Palestinian cause, I'm allowed to push fake news. I was literally told this. Multiple supporters of one of these accounts I called out. All these bots showed up and said that he's better than the mainstream, does more lies. This is okay. We're allowed to put out fake news because it helps support financially the account, and they're part of the movement. We're on the same team. Why are you upset? Listen, there's literally disinformation during a wartime situation that's getting millions of impressions. This is a problem, and I would say it's very easy for the intelligence services in the West or Israel or anywhere to basically inject money into this and to exacerbate the disinformation. Hesher knows, Freddie knows. We've been there live as it's being fed in over the years in different situations. We know.
And if we were in the same team, if you're in a combat team, you don't fit the combat team with fake news. If you're going to go for the same objective and you're part of the same team, you're not going to start to tell stories, fake news to your colleagues.
Well, you know how it works.
Everybody's going to get killed. That's what's going to happen. You don't do that. You're not helping. How
it works is you build these accounts have built up trust with their audience over years. So people, when they post something, most of their followers who don't like clicking through or Googling stuff to double check, most people are lazy. They just read headlines. They trust these accounts. So these people are abusing the trust of their followers who made them rich. Okay. On this latest iteration of X, they're abusing their trust because they're more likely to believe the disinformation because it's from a dissident, trusted source. This is total abuse of your audience. And I think personally, this is worse than the mainstream media because of that trust that is inherent there because they're on the opposition or dissident side, supposedly speaking truth to power. I personally think you need to have a higher standard than the mainstream media, but that doesn't go viral. What goes viral is fake news. We've done tests. I don't know if you remember the tests I was doing on Facebook, Hesher, where we were doing our own test to see how fast and far the fake news goes. And the velocity of fake news there's nothing like it. It outperforms everything because there's no scoops anymore. For real news, there's plenty of sources. You can never be first. But if you put something out that nobody's seen or heard that thing, it's the only thing. It pops on people's brains. They click, like, and share. You get the views and the analytics, ad revenue in the bank. Cha-ching, cha-ching. People know how to play this game. Mainstream.
But does it not imply human intervention, Patrick? I mean, algorithm. That's what I said in one of your response to when you were exposing this phenomenon, which has been going on for quite some time. But there is a need. There is absolutely no other way to explain it apart from human intervention. Like on Twitter platforms, okay, I understand the algorithm, I understand that certain words and certain things that you say might not be promoted. You might not get, a lot of message and a lot of text, a lot of whatever it is that you could, that allows you to interact with other people that might have questions, that might disagree with you or agree with you. That is surprising. That's what you shadow ban or whatever you want to call it. Even though Elon Musk said there's no more shadow banning and everybody's got the same treatment, it's not true. The algorithm is going to do a classification and you're going to be on top or you're going to be at the bottom because that's the chain of things. But the problem that I have is that when the fake news is given that velocity, that dynamic, and that is allowed to perform much better than actually a good story that's going to remain under 1,000 views, and these guys go 4 million views, and it's completely not job, completely unfunded, no source whatsoever, and it's trust me, bro, can I use,
Trust
and
me,
these
bro.
guys, yeah.
Source is trust me, bro.
That's what it is.
Source.
Right. And did you guys see the whole Bob Moran thing too? There was an account called Sal the Agorist who took one of Bob Moran's cartoons and changed the wording on it to suit their own agenda. and deleted his name from it. So he writes on X the following here. He writes, when accounts with way more followers than me share one of my cartoons with the signature removed and the words changed to something less clever typed in an ugly font, it really makes my Sunday. So, there you go. I mean, that's some major hubris right there. I mean, maybe this account, Sal the Agorist, has more viewers, but so many people know Bob Moran and know Bob Moran's work. So it says a lot that somebody would actually steal it, delete his name. I mean, fine, you want to mess with it and make your own, say, hey, I took this from Bob Moran and I fixed it, or I made it about what I want to talk about today. But none of that. Just completely delete his signature, Photoshop it out, put some terrible sans serif font on top of it, and just post it as your own. I mean, amazing.
So when Iran fired their missile salvos, right? Elon Musk accidentally tweeted one of the videos of the missiles raining down on Israel, and it got 1.2 million views. And then he didn't have anything. He just tweeted the video, and then he deleted it. Okay, so I saw it before it was deleted. Oh no, I saw it when it was deleted. It was still there. I screenshotted it. I'm the only one who screenshotted it, and I posted it as "Oops, a misfire" by Elon. And another one of these so-called influencer accounts, anonymous accounts, stole my thing, and of course didn't give me credit for it, obviously, because that's what they do all day, every day. These people are shameless. I've seen them take Freddie, you've seen your content copied and pasted many times. So Freddie does the work of getting the right video, doing the analysis, making sure it's actually, together and everything's in order, and he publishes it, and then some people will come and rip it. This happens all the time, but these are the biggest accounts doing it.
And they get more views than I do, for sure.
Oh yeah, they can turn one of your tweets, Freddie, into 500,000 views.
Yeah, definitely.
In about 2-3 hours. So and you don't get any of the benefit. So the other thing they don't do for the algorithm is they believe that it's not good to retweet other people's work. So it's a very selfish practice by these big accounts, because they think that's bad for the algorithm and it won't be good for their news feed timeline for visibility. So they, amongst themselves, and there is some truth in this, they're very selfish. You go look at their feeds. So my personal value on this, my opinion is, I support people doing good work. I support people doing good analysis. I support people tweeting good, clever, original, authentic opinions and maybe uncovering real news. I will retweet them because I want my people who follow me to see their work. I might add a comment to it, something on top, but often I don't, because for whatever reason, I don't want to change or spoil what they've done. So I've been told by these influencers, you shouldn't do that. It's going to hurt your algorithm. So if that's true, Elon Musk has created and incentivized the worst practices that go against the spirit of social media 1.0. Sharing, supporting, helping each other, respecting and acknowledging people doing really good work. And he's incentivized the worst garbage and turned X into a toxic waste dump of fake news and fake breaking news. That's what Elon Musk has done, whether he knows it or not. Because look at who he boosts and who are people putting the most outrageously twisted and skewed versions of reality. Much of it's fabricated, totally fake in many cases. And they're allowed to basically coin in the cash from that. And it's manipulative, it's doing a disservice, and it's ruining the information space. I think in the long term, it's going to degrade X. And these people, under the guise of what they think is okay, I've been told by their followers defending them that it's free speech. So shut up, Patrick. Shut up. It's free speech. I said, this isn't about free speech. I'm calling out fake news. But I said, what you're doing here is creating an environment that's empowering government and big tech lords to clamp down on censorship because of the proliferation of fake news. So you're actually feeding the censorship industrial complex by boosting and promoting a very corrupt practice, which is festering on X.
Right. And what do we see this week? We see new calls from Hillary Clinton, from John Kerry, from all the creatures in Washington, D.C. and adjacent to Washington, D.C., all the security agencies, the intel agencies, all openly saying the importance, I'm paraphrasing, but the importance of we need control of the narrative. The importance of our control of the narrative is paramount here. So you're exactly right. What does this set up? This sets up an environment where you've got grifters like this who are looking to make a buck or tens of thousands of bucks or who knows millions of bucks.
Between 5 and 10,000 a month. Some of them 15 to 20,000 a month.
Flabbergasting amounts of money. You know, when you think about how hard so many people work to do their social media hustle, to do good independent journalism, to do good, quality analysis and opinion, you've got people out here incentivized to make all this money and do the whole 5-to-1 thing where it's like, okay, we got a number of good ones, we built up an audience, now we start throwing the flashy red icon in there, the breaking, the emergency this, emergency that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's absolutely amazing, and they're actually walking us right into a situation again where we're going to be looking at, the whole world's been suffering from this, these disinformation boards, these treaties, these online safety things. Canada has it. They're doing their best to have it here, even though they just do it through subversion and technocracy mostly. Australia's got it. New Zealand's got it. It's everywhere. They're looking to shut down freedom of speech completely and make it a legal quagmire and a technical quagmire that nobody without insane resources can get out of. And these people on X are pushing us into that situation where they will then be the only people that have the resources to get out of it because they've bankrolled so much money and they're now part of that system. So, you can just see that this takes us to a place where, everyone's been corralled into X.
It's lowering the bar of good practice and of the integrity of the information, credibility, all of that. It's lowering the bar. It's forcing it down. And that's what Elon has done on X, unfortunately. Maybe he didn't intend to do that, but because of decisions that were made, they've incentivized the worst possible behavior, which is be first, no matter what, with the breaking news, and twist it, contort it, steal it, whatever, as long as you're the first out, and then copy and paste, and everything goes viral. And your accounts, you have multiple accounts, and you retweet your other accounts. So you have 3 or 4 big accounts, and you can basically monopolize through the production of distorted and fake news. And that's exactly what's happening. If I was government, if I was the intelligence service, I wanted to take over X, it'd be very easy. It's very easy. You just you inject somebody in there with some capital and pretend they're an independent journalist, and get the trust. Do some real reporting. Put out some good content. If you've got the money, you can buy bots to increase your followers. You can game Twitter Spaces as well. There's lots of things you can do with. If you have the cash, you can pump up. To create this impression that you're more popular than you are, and then it's like fake it till you make it, and then you do get, then you start getting real followers, and you can stop using the bots basically. And there's plenty of accounts that have done this. There's a whole business. There's these people are buying and selling accounts amongst themselves, and they're, but I mean before Elon bought it, people were buying retweets because of Substack, to drive Substack subscriptions. A lot of the top COVID health freedom, there's a little black market going on of big accounts retweeting and boosting people for money, because it would go viral and then they'd get the subs on the Substack. There's all of this practice going on in the background. Most people aren't aware of this. It's only because, you know, you're talking to some of these people off camera and they sort of tell you some of these things at conferences and stuff, which I've been privy to. It's pretty shocking, but they've gamed the system. And here we have now a whole nother gaming of the system on a major social media platform for money. So fake news for profit, basically.
Look at this. Here's just a, you know, quick visual example of what click farming can look like. You know, so it's like you get, you know, a number of these accounts, high profile accounts, and they can use systems like this, you know, where they can literally create a viewership for themselves that pushes it up the algorithm at a rapid pace. I mean, you know, they've got so many different options for how to do this. And then when they start buying and selling accounts, this kind of thing. I mean, there's plenty of reports about that stuff.
So the hardest, think about it. I don't want to belabor this. We can have another discussion about this in a future episode. But the hardest, and Freddie knows, I know, Hesher knows, the hardest mile on a platform like X is from 0 to 10,000 followers. That is, if you don't have some celebrity or you haven't been on Tucker Carlson, you don't have something to turbocharge your engagement, some, you know, event or something like that, or association, or Donald Trump didn't retweet you during the 2016 campaign. I know people whose careers began because Trump retweeted them on the campaign in 2016, literally. Yeah. Before that, nobody heard of them. So I know it's crazy, but so that Freddie, you guys will agree, 1 to 10,000 is pretty damn tough. Like,
so hard work.
It's hard work. Now, what if you could what if someone had 10,000 followers and they're willing to sell it to you for a couple $1,000s? If you had the network and you knew how to monetize it once you got up into the higher levels, you might spend that money. And if this person was desperate and they'll sell it to you for $1,000. Now those deals happen, and they happen on our side. Okay, most average users would never know this stuff happens, but it does. And a lot of the people who engage in this sort of, you know, activity, business activity, a lot of them are out for money. They're out for clout and money. And if they don't get the money directly from X, they'll be able to leverage the X following to make money off the platform. And I think it's very easy to see how this is done. But you either need to bot up your account, pay for bots, or you buy the account, then change the name, and you become the owner of that account. So you don't have to do that really difficult slog, which is to get 5 or 10,000 followers, or, you know, 15 or whatever. I'm sure the price goes up the more followers you have. I wouldn't ever imagine doing that, but people do it. And people who have got the cash, obviously. Government has unlimited cash if they want to get in that game. Unlimited. Yeah. In fact, you could buy somebody. There's a lot of accounts that have you mentioned a couple of them, Freddie. There's no people there. It's an AI generated profile, PFP.
Ghost account.
and they have a name and they have a brand, but there's no human associated with it. That could have been bought and sold already, or it's being run by as a part of a farm by one of the other top accounts who has maybe 4 or 5 smaller accounts that is in their farm. And so if you add all this up, I mean, if you have a good farm on X, if you're running a good farm, you're talking about, you know, 30 grand a month.
Yep.
You know, 40 grand a month. This is not small change. It's a lot of money. And but what you're doing is you're advertising like these are individual accounts, and they're not. They're not. And in many ways they're automated to a degree, either through dashboards. What Hesher showed is the extreme, you know, extreme gaming of the system there. But there's software versions of what Hesher showed us. which is basically a Hootsuite on steroids. And that's what the U.S. government do for color revolutions. Those are the sort of, in fact, those systems are developed at least, by the military or by intelligence. The Iranian Revolution in 2009, the Green Revolution, all the English language tsunami of dissidents on Twitter. That was, the U.S. was running a lot of that, and a lot of maybe capital ventures came out of some of these projects because they developed proprietary software to be able to manage so many different accounts under different names. And there's AI now. I mean, the potential for abuse and gaming the system has never been greater. So that's what I'm concerned about. I care about I want it to be a good platform. I want the quality of information. I want it to beat and surpass the mainstream media in terms of information integrity. And everybody has that within their potential to do. All you have to do is some due diligence. I'm talking to the choir here amongst you guys, but there's a lot of people, this is a foreign concept, especially to some Gen Zers and millennials who don't think that's a requirement. The due diligence, no, what matters is subs, views, and clicks. That is the currency of the realm. Attention in the attention-based economy. They don't care about due diligence of information. I sound like a Luddite, talking about journalistic, ethics. I mean, they're like, what? I've had that
Go back
conversation.
to the 20th century, Patrick. You don't belong to the 21st century. Rules have changed. You got old.
But they're damaging the long-term viability of the information space, and they're inviting the powers that be to come in and look at the analytics and clamp down on free speech. This is what these people are profiting from it, but they're destroying it in the long run, and they'll eventually destroy the trust in it, which is a shame because it has great potential. We all have things that we've looked at and have great potential, and you're like, damn, if only there had been a little more, integrity in that, it could have been amazing, but it went the other way. How many times have we seen this in the world? I think we're looking at one of those situations with X. So it's doing well in terms of engagement, but in terms of the actual quality of the information, there's never been more fake and fraudulent news ever on any social media platform in history. It is by far the world champion, and it's a garbage dump, basically. And unless you know how to navigate it and you're really judicious, you're basically wading through half of it is garbage. And Elon has incentivized that with whatever choices he made. Whoever's designed the algorithm, he's incentivized bad behavior, basically.
Yeah.
Intentional or not, it's happening.
Right.
It's happening.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to Ruckus yesterday, and we were talking about Daniel McAdams from the Ron Paul Institute. Daniel McAdams is calling out Mike Benz and some other big accounts out there also. And it's amazing to watch, like Mike Benz say, yeah, never heard of you. That, comments like that, never heard of this guy. It's just like, what?
Woe be you, little man.
Okay. Yeah, so it's really interesting to watch this going on X, Pat, and thanks for getting in there and doing everything you're doing too. It's really shining a light on the pitfall here, because it's like a lot of people, mainstream conservatives now, they just think and accept that X is the free speech platform, and that the mainstream conservatives, the biggest plank in Trump's platform is freedom of speech. And it's like, wait a minute, what? Like, how are you not paying attention here? If not, it's I know it's a little complicated and convoluted, but it's easy to see when there's enough communication happening about it. And we were also noticing that anyone that would come in and say something positive about your comments, or Daniel McAdams in some cases, or whoever, all of a sudden it's like that big, super user, whatever, monetized user, they come through and they block everybody that comes in and says anything of support or adds anything to what you're saying. Yeah. And that just destroys the entire town square concept. And it sets up, I hate to use the tired term, but it sets up an echo chamber, basically, where the echo seems to just bounce back cash at these people, and the conversation slowly just disappears from that account the more these things happen.
Yeah, that happened to me yesterday. I got blocked by an influencer account because I added clarification to in totally over the top inflammatory World War III tweet. And I basically said, no, actually, here's the actual story from 6 months ago. So this isn't a thing, and is really inflaming tensions with Russia and the United States. So I was just dialing it down with some facts, being polite about it, and a barrage of insults from this influencer, real personal insults against me. And then they went very bravely and they blocked me, and then deleted all his insulting comments after blocking me, and then blocked all of the people that supported me in their comments and hid their replies. So these people are like, you know, completely like, I don't know how you get to this point of megalomania in your head, you know, but there's a lot of people like that. They believe they have a reputation to uphold as an extreme personality or something, and they think what they're doing is perfectly fine, and they're encouraged by a lot of people. There's a lot of people that there's a bit of an entertainment element to this. People like to be entertained, and I think that that's part of it. And a lot of people, this is people in the West like egging on war on our side, supposedly, right? But they themselves will never have to face or look at the realities of war. So it's very easy for them to be hawkish, and it's all a bit of fun and entertainment for them. And so they like the over-the-top personalities and stuff like that. And it really engenders a level of corruption, because I've, you know, been to those places and had to, as an American, had to sit there and politely sit and let people vent at me in Iraq, in Lebanon, and not so much, not rudely. They just were venting about all of the suffering and problems with the U.S. government in Syria too, but they were doing it politely. But I had to sit there and listen to that, and I'm like looking around and I'm thinking, wow, you know, you guys, your monthly salary is basically a meal at McDonald's by today's prices in America, and that's life in America, and that's your life, and your life is because of the war that we brought, and so I'm very careful about egging on more war. I'm always going to look for a diplomatic solution. We have to be realistic about the realities of war and conflict and what might happen, which we talked about today earlier. But we're doing that from an analytical point of view, being realistic. My personal preference is no more killing, to somehow have a resolution that works for everybody. That's what my intention is. I know it's sometimes not realistic, but if you lose that point in your heart where that's no longer your guiding light and your guiding principle, the road to corruption mentally and spiritually and politically is already made for you at that point, and you can easily tumble down that road. It's too easy. And so we have to check ourselves. And these are real people. This is the people that will suffer because of our war that we're egging on, our governments, okay, and all the influencers that want World War III. And I've been to those places. The next generation will suffer. The next generation will suffer. They'll be suffering when the people that waged the war had already been long dead. They're still going to suffer in Iraq, in Lebanon, in Syria. So we need to think about that when we're like all hawkish and gung-ho about seeing the missiles fly and maybe nukes going off. I mean, it's totally insane. And I think this is a big problem in terms of the activist community, if you will, or the dissident community, the thirst for vengeance is so great against Israel or whoever, or the U.S. even, that they really want to see Armageddon. That they want to see Armageddon, and they can't wait. But the reality is, if you're in New Zealand or Canada, it might not hit you directly. But if you're in the Middle East and Europe, you might be the first to realize that sort of disaster, if you will. So, I mean, people, honestly, it boggles the mind how insensitive and detached a lot of people are, and then many of them are just looking at this as a business, unfortunately. Anyway, I'll leave it there. I could rant on forever.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's maddening. We live in the 21st century, and to think that we're just gonna willingly walk into another set of generational trauma and destruction and everything that comes out of that, when we all should well know that the whole plan here from the people, the powers that should not be, that push this kind of stuff, is global dominance, is technocracy, is a lack of any sort of freedoms and equality that we have actually built as citizens and as people in various cultures around the planet. That all goes away. And for what? I mean, geez. Look at Libya. They never talk about Libya anymore, and it's like that place is just, it's devastating what's happened there. And they told us they were going to free that place. Everything we're doing this for peace. We're going to bring peace to the Middle East, and it's like, well, here we are all these years later, and we've got dead veterans all over from NATO countries. We've got disabled veterans. We've got veterans with PTSD, people who were there and experienced that on the good guy side, if you will, quote unquote. And then you look at the country and it's like, well, what was gained out of it? There's the open slave trade happening there. There's barbarism, and it's just horrible to think that, the other thing that really gets me is like, all this is about getting a group of people, right? Like getting rid of, it was Al-Qaeda and it was Taliban and it was ISIS and, all these things, and they're using the same thing. And it's like, none of those groups are gone. I mean, never mind the history of Western powers funding them to, bring them up in the first place, but there's never been a rooting out of any group of people. All these things have only made those situations worse, and those groups grow back up into different people. And it's just like, and then more government money goes their way and they're radicalized again. They're used as chess pieces. And I mean, to think that
how about Nazis in Ukraine?
Yeah.
They were supposed to have been extinct after the Second World War. No, that's 80 years later. 80 years later, and look, a huge resurgence thanks to who? And what? That's pretty incredible if you think about it.
I think it's a business model, incompetency and absolutely no plan B, no plan C, no plan X. It's no plan whatsoever. You go out there, do stupid things, doesn't matter because there's simply no repercussions. So if you're CIA, doesn't matter how bad you are. And you can clearly see, if you read the CIA story and all the way up to these days, you can see the change after the 9/11, how these organizations have become a complete rogue, not interesting in analyzing, not interesting in giving, political diplomacy values, first, really looking at how to improve this in order to avoid the ultimate, sacrifice, which will be to go out there and kill someone. Right now, they don't want to interrogate anybody. They don't want to talk to anyone. They just send guys, the old paramilitaries. CIA has become a paramilitary operation. Go out there, do the dirty job, kill, come back, be a good father, a good mother. That's all it is. These people are not doing any more intelligence collections, data analysis. This is all time. This is Larry Johnson time. This time is over. Counterintelligence out there, they don't do the same job they used to do 20 years ago. So when you understand that, it really doesn't matter if it doesn't work. Afghanistan is a great example of that. It's really great how much money, because it's a money machine,
because
Since the Dulles brothers, this is Wall Street in action, how to make quick quick box. It doesn't matter what happened, how the market's going to react. Who cares? We move to another destination and we start all over again. And this is Ukraine, this is now Israel, and then next it's going to be maybe in Africa somewhere, who knows. It's business. People are getting rich, are doing stupid things, and nobody seems to care.
Failure is a much more profitable business model. Perennial failures, actually. Success isn't that great, because if you solve the problem, then what? So failure is definitely, you're right, Freddie, that's the
super currency.
That is the number one model there. That's the best. Yeah.
It's promoted like in the United Nations. They never get fired. They get promoted. You get D3 there, I'll go D4 there. Just stay out of the loop. Keep quiet. You're terrible at what you do, but we'll keep you in.
If you come in and into that organization, you want to start solving problems. You're basically, your job is on a short fuse. Basically, you guys both know what I'm talking about too.
Oh, that's short living. That's short living. They already, the recruiter, the guy that recruited you is going to be in trouble because you should have known this guy is not. He doesn't go along with the program.
That's right. That's right. Don't try to be too industrious at your job either, and try to get shit done, because that's trouble.
Don't reinvent the wheel. You'll get slapped, or you won't make it anyway. You won't be formalized as an official. You won't get your diplomatic passport. You're not part of the team. Don't question anything. Just go along with the plan. Take your paycheck and your retirement and shut up. It's not your business.
That's government 101 career advice. If you want to get into government or the UN, work for a really good NGO. Basically, that we're giving you the playbook. So just success. Which is the coaching session we're having here for anybody who's thinking about getting into government or NGOs. Try to be as incompetent as you can. Don't get anything done. Don't get too clever. Don't solve any problems, and try not to do too much real work. Then you'll see how fast you will climb the career ladder. You could be like seat at the table after not very long, if you really.
It's a sad thing to see that the NGO young kids, going into NGOs in different crises of the world in Africa. So, and I met so many of them, and they all come with their dreams. They work from headquarters, and then they finally get this assignment, of their dream, working in a major, camp, refugee camps, and they're going to make a difference, or they're going to go and work in some, remote village, trying to put a pump waters, and there's so much things that could be done for half of the price, but just the entire operation costs 10 times more than what actually they're bringing onto the table, because it comes from miles away. It's been purchased 4 times, and by the time you get there, you still have to pay a little bit, to have to be authorized to put it together. So, as I say, when you see billions of dollars of budget in the United Nations, working with the NGOs, all that it's a business. It's nothing. It's a business. There's only few people in headquarters understanding it. There's poor kids sent out there. They're full of dreams, and then they come back and they're like, "What did I get myself into? And what a waste of money and time." And we could do so much better. There are great people out there. I met some beautiful people, great hearts, great, completely honest. And they learn along the way. Most of them just walk away because they're like, what a scam, But most of them, they'll end up working in the UN or some stuff like that, because UN is just easy. You'll take your paycheck.
Better parties.
These good parties.
Better parties.
People that watch me, they must just laugh there. They're like, Fred,
You don't have to worry about, being surrounded by critical thinkers and problem solvers and people that are raising the bar, anything like that. It's like, no, you just gotta, keep the bar low so we can get to those parties and enjoy those parties and start the morning slow. And problem solving, don't worry about the problem solving. That comes from, the higher levels up there. You don't need to worry about that. The CEO of the NGO is busy talking with, CIA, Mossad, diplomats. Like, it's fine. We got all this stuff. We just need you to, come in here and don't bring all that critical thinking that you've developed on yourself, because you certainly didn't get it in school.
Just remember, you're not here for the job. You're here for the parties.
That's right.
Clear on that, right? Clear. Okay.
Yeah,
that's right.
Good.
That's right.
But
All right.
if it wasn't true, we wouldn't be laughing, would we? But
yeah.
We wish we didn't see what we saw. I think that's probably that. I don't know if it's the right way to say it, but yeah, it's. I wish I could unsee what I've seen,
Yeah.
but it's impossible. And yeah, it's you become a bit kind of not sarcastic about it, but it's
Right.
it's hard to swallow the pill after that.
Look, you can be president of the United States if you're really bad at your job. If you're really bad at your job, you'll end up being president. Look at Kamala Harris; she's like one step away from being president. So, I mean, that should be an inspiration to anyone who's mediocre and with no talent out there. I mean, she is an inspiration, and for that reason,
yeah, but she didn't want to be president. You know, it was because there was a drunken parties, and she was with a couple of corporate guys and government guys, and suddenly somehow they were like, "Why don't you be the president?" And she thought like, "Yeah, let's do it. It's spontaneous, And this is celebrating spontaneity. It's really about capturing the moment and saying, you know what? It's not about me. It's about the fact that it's available. And the money is available. I mean, look at the donors. I mean, this is just is an embarrassment. I mean, you get Dick Cheney's daughters coming to Canada and stuff. The biggest war criminal on the planet still living. The other guys are dead.
The crazy thing is, no matter how much money they throw at some of these people, they can't give them charisma. They can't give them authenticity. They can't give them public. They can't get the love from the people. They can't connect, but more money than ever, as you say, Freddie, is being chucked into this machine, and the caliber of the people is getting lower and lower. So that's why trust is breaking down, and this is again fueling populism, and not always for the best reasons, unfortunately. But it is what it is. This is where populism comes from, and you just have to look at what caused it. And we know in America what's caused it. So people who know, and the media is acting like it's not happening, and that we're all sort of evil wingnuts and whatnot, conspiracy theorists. But the truth is well known to everybody, I think.
Sometimes you must wonder if you want to see Americans waking up or if you want them to stay asleep. I'm wondering because, I'm all about peace, and I'm all about, people finding their own ways and understanding that this is all a game, and you're only part of it if you want to play it, Is it really worth fighting it in the way, history is pushing, these revolutions, this uprising of people getting so pissed off they become violent because they just want to get rid of what seems to be has been a lie, which has been their life. Basically, they've been living a lie all their life. And when you wake up to that, you become very violent. There is no in between. You just go wild. I say, what? This is what you've been doing? Oh, okay. Do you really want that? Or do you want people to emancipate themselves? And this is where I'm going towards my, my retirement, is to emancipate myself, being self-sustainable, looking into ways where even if I have to move on the other side of the world in a place that is probably not the most fashionable place to be, but in a place where I can be self-sustainable for me, for myself, for my family, for those, my loved one, and culture, and still remain in touch with the world, but kind of, not trying to fight it to the bitter ends, trying to say, let it die on its own, because surely it's so bad that at some stage it will implode, it will kind of die on its own, because the juice is no longer be there. And you can see this new generation, these Z generations and all that, they couldn't care less about all of it. They're not even interested anymore. They're not interested. All they want is that, are these guys, can they go? Can we just get on with our life? And I think we're dragging these parasites along, but at some stage their son, their granddaughters, they're going to have to see it for themselves. That this,
I think they are. I think many are.
I think so too. I think so.
And that's positive. So it's not. It's there's a positive side to all of that as well, and we're seeing that too.
Absolutely,
seeing that too. So, but
yeah,
it's probably a good point to wrap up. So Hesher, I'll leave you with the master of ceremonies there.
All right. Well, it's been a pleasure, you guys. I really appreciate you joining us today for Sunday Wire, and appreciate you out there for watching, whether you're on X or Rumble or YouTube, or listening out there on Spreaker, or perhaps over at Rockfin. We'll get these videos out to 21 Wire, and they'll go up on their services as well. Shortly after the broadcast here, we'll be going out in podcast format as well. Freddie, thank you so much for taking the time today. It's been wonderful to see you. It's been a minute since I saw you, and I really appreciate you joining, man. Anything you want to throw out there before we got to let you go?
Well, it's good to be out there. I've been in a hole, working on an investigation for over a year now. So I'm wrapping it up. But it's taken most of my time. So I have very little time for Twitter and any other things. But I'm really looking forward to go back a little bit more in 2024, 2025. Going back into in the real kind of questionings and pushing the boundaries a little bit further. I've been quiet. I've been learning rather than, kind of exposing or trying to be part of the major debate. I think there's a lot of people doing great job. If I have nothing to really add to the mix, I'd rather spend my time doing my little investigations and come up with something we can all go around the table and talked about. So yes, good to be out on Sunday. I guess Sunday Wire. I was glad you were in south of France last summer. We had some great show with Pat as well. Look, this is a great platform because the integrity and the credibility is there. And that's why I'm always happy to be part of that show, because it's improvised. It's just they're genuine people talking about subject that matters with the best of our abilities. And I'm hopefully, and I know the followers are really loyal in that sense, and they'll take this where it needs to be.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks again. We'll see you next time, Freddie. That's Freddie Ponton. Everybody, thank you for joining us. Patrick, anything final you want to throw out there before we shut it down?
No, it was great. It was great to share the stage with you, and of course, Freddie. Freddie and I have not done a broadcast together since mid-July, so it's early July. So it's been a long time, and it was absolute joy and a pleasure to talk to you and Freddie. One of the best all-around conversations that I can remember that we've had on this or any other program for that matter. So yeah, I was really enjoyed it, and I hope it was informative. Hope it spurred some thoughts and ideas in people's heads, and that's what we're here for. And thank you very much, Hesher, for steering the Starship Sunday Wire.
Absolutely. Happy to do it, my friend. And I'll look forward to doing this again with you very soon. You have a great rest of your weekend, man.
Thank you.
All right. That's Patrick Henningsen. And this has been the Sunday Wire right here on 21 Wire and ACR, coming at you here live this October the 6th. Everybody keep your eyes out. Have a great rest of the weekend, but keep your eyes out for any big breaking events tomorrow. You got some great information, a little bit of stick and rudder about where you could be going and maybe looking on X in particular and other places. If you want to keep up with, us, I'm at Hesher Media. Patrick, of course, is at 21 Wire. Freddie's out there too. They got links to his Twitter on the show post up here. We'll have show posts up at 21stcenturywire.com and alternate current radio shortly after the program. Audio podcast will be going out, and share it around. That really helps us out quite a bit. And we will look forward to doing this again with you very soon, hopefully next weekend. And hopefully we won't have too many crazy events happen between now and then. Like to see a cessation of violence and rhetoric, but it is election season, and we showed you some of the rhetoric today. Didn't bother to show you some of the violence. I have a bunch of that queued up too, but you can go find that on your own. And we'll see you next time. And be sure to go to 21stcenturywire.com and support. There's a support link up there in the top. If you want to get in there and become a member, that would be awesome. If you are a member, thank you. Same with alternatecurrentradio.com. We've got support links up there. A few of you have helped out both platforms in the last few weeks at a time when we really, really need it and really appreciate it. So those of you that have done so, thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts. We really appreciate it because, clearly we're trying to use X and our platforms in the right way. And look what we're up against. The field is very convoluted. So Really appreciate all you subscribers, patrons, anything like that, and just share the material. Otherwise, we'll see you next week for another Sunday Wire right here on Alternate Current Radio and 21stCenturyWire.com.